All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is March 24th and just a little bit after 4 o'clock p.m. So I'm going to call this special meeting of the San Diego Community Power Board of Directors closed session to order. And let's do a roll call first.
City of San Diego representative.
LaCava, present.
County of San Diego representative.
Tara Lawson-Reamer, present.
Imperial Beach representative.
Dina, present.
La Mesa representative. National City representative.
De Los Solis, present.
Chula Vista representative. Encinitas representative.
Here, Joe Mosca.
We have a quorum.
Perfect. All right. Do we have any, Kimberly, do we have any public comments on the closed session agenda?
No, we do not.
All right, so we have 3 items on the closed session agenda: public employee appointment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. That's our CEO. Conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. Agency designated representative, Cindy Krebs, Alliance Resource Consulting, unrepresented employee, CEO. Third item is public employment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, title Interim Chief Executive Officer. And now we will move, if there are no comments by my colleagues, we'll move to closed session, and we'll come back to this link after we're done with closed session, and our general counsel will report out. And so you guys have the link to the closed session, so we'll move to that. All right, see you there.
Hey, Ty.
Hey, Kim, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, I'm doing all right. Doing all right, hanging in there.
Good.
Yeah. How's
I
things
think
going
they
with you?
will be coming out of closed session shortly, hopefully.
Here they come.
There's
Right on cue.
Bill.
Hey, Bill. I think you're on mute, Bill. Maybe you're talking quietly.
Of course I am, always am. Sorry.
Do that about 5 times a day myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, Karen, we haven't met. Ty Tosdell.
Hi,
Regulatory
Ty. How
Counsel.
are you?
All right. How about yourself?
Doing well, thank you.
Good.
Karen,
Hi, Bill. All right.
Hopefully they won't go way over like last time.
I don't think they will. I just text.
Okay, good.
yeah, I just saw one from Joe saying they were adjourning and ready to come out. So
Okay, good. Karen, I brought something just for you.
Nice. Nice.
They play at 6:30, so we have to hurry with this
I
meeting.
know. I have to go collect my children, get them back, and get the Duke game going.
That's right.
The last two I saw, though, they lost. So it's almost like, should I even watch? They do better when I don't watch.
Oh, so that's the reason?
Doubtful, but the psyche.
I think it's all the emotion because of Coach K.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's a big, big deal. He
Yeah.
was coach when I was there. It's been there a long
It'll be a big
time.
loss for Duke, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see who we've got. Okay, Surge, promote. More, promote.
Greg,
I'm pinch hitting for Director Baber for a few minutes.
I see.
And Kimberly, we still have the closed session agenda up. I don't know if you want to switch that to the open session.
Yes.
Welcome, Karen.
Hi, Cody. How are you?
Great. Nice to see you.
You too.
Mhm.
Soon in the flesh, I'm sure.
Yes, we're very excited.
Great. I am too.
Hey, Cody.
Hi, Karen. It's a pleasure meeting you virtually. Look forward to that live in-person meeting as well.
Absolutely, Eric. Likewise.
Kimberly, how are we doing with roll call? Do we have a quorum? Looks like we do.
Okay, thanks. Okay, McCann is trying to join, and I believe we do have a quorum. Yes.
So I see National City, I see Imperial Beach, La Mesa, County of San Diego's with us. I don't see Joe. Is Joe with us?
La Cava?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm here.
Yes, he's here.
Oh, all right. There you are. Sorry. Apologize for that. So we have everyone except for Chula Vista. Do you want to just ask Councilmember McCann to join us when he can?
Yes, I just got off the phone with him and I will watch him in the attendees portion. That's where he's coming, but he should be on any moment.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's get this going. Well, good afternoon or evening, everyone. It's great to see everyone in our little boxes, maybe someday in person, but right now in our little boxes. So welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors for San Diego Community Power. It is a little bit after 5 on March 24th. This is our regular meeting time. And so let's get this meeting going with a Pledge of Allegiance. So please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kimberly, can you do a roll call for us?
Yes, City of San Diego representative,
La Cava, present.
County of San Diego representative,
Here.
Imperial Beach representative,
Zadina present.
La Mesa representative,
Here.
National City representative,
Sotelo Solis present.
Chula Vista representative, Encinitas representative.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Perfect. I'm going to turn it over to our Assistant General Counsel, Nick Norvell, for a report from closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board met in closed session on items 1 through 3 listed on the closed session agenda. Regarding item 1, upon a motion by Chair Mosca and seconded by Director Sotelo Solis, the board voted unanimously with Directors Baber and Padilla absent to appoint Karen Burns as Chief Executive Officer of San Diego Community Power, subject to approval and execution of an employment agreement with Ms. Burns. An employment agreement with Ms. Burns will be considered during item 12 of the regular board meeting this evening, and a copy of the full proposed employment agreement has now been posted to SDCP's website, along with the other agenda materials for the meeting, and it's listed as an update to item 12. And additional details regarding the employment agreement will be provided during the discussion on item 12. And there is no additional reportable action from closed session.
Great. Thank you, Nicholas. And let's move to, I did want to note that well, I don't know if this is too personal, Nicholas, or not, but I did want to note that our general counsel is not with us tonight, and Nick is sitting in the big seat because our general counsel and his wife just had a baby. So they just had a baby, and so they're just at home with a week-old baby. And so we wish the best to Ryan and his family and his new baby, which I think is now number 3 in terms of kids. So he definitely has his hands full, and I know that because I have 2. Anyways, let's move to public comment. Well, actually, anybody, you have the posted agenda. Does anybody have any items to change or on the posted agenda or withdraw? Kimberly, are we changing anything? No.
Not
All
that I'm
right.
aware of.
Well, then let's,
Chair?
Director LaCava.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask for anything to be added, but I asked for the Citizens Advisory Committee to have a spot on the agenda. I'm not asking for that tonight, but I'm hoping going forward, we can get some kind of report out of their monthly meeting. So, thank
Yeah,
you.
we could.
You
we could-
requested their report to be quarterly, and I have them for next month.
All right. And then at that time, Director LaCava, we could talk about, generally speaking, whenever the Risk and Finance Committee or the Community Advisory Committee have any actions before us, we invite them to come and speak to those items. And I think we also have quarterly times when the Community Advisory Committee can come before a committee and speak about items that they're working on that even when there's not action items on our agenda, But when that item comes up in April, if you wanted to speak further about how you think that should go, we can entertain that at that time, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. I appreciate that very much, Chair.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to public comment. And this is the moment in time for members of the public to comment on items that are not on our agenda, but within the purview of this board. Kimberly, do we have anyone?
We have one non-agenda public comment.
Perfect. Let's recognize that person.
It's an anonymous written comment, and it states, will SDCP have a booth at the Balboa Park Earth Day event on April 24th for public outreach? If so, please share the booth location. That is the end of the written public comments for non-agenda items.
All right, let's share that with our communication people, with Director Rita De La Fuente or whomever and her team that deals with that.
We
All
got
right.
it.
Awesome. Thank you, Cody. Let's move on to consent calendar. So we have 11 items in the consent calendar. We'll take it as one motion. Are there any questions on the consent calendar? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Carlos Solis motion to approve consent items 1 through 11.
All right.
Second. In a second.
Perfect. So we have a motion by Director Sotelo Solis and a motion and a second by Director Tadina. Let's vote on this.
Director Humora, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Dedina, how do you vote?
Dina, aye.
Director LaCava, how do you vote?
LaCava, aye.
Director Lawson Reamer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director McCann is absent. Director Sotelo Solis, how do you vote?
Sotelo Solis, aye.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes, with one director absent.
Perfect. Let's move to item number 12, which I am excited about. Excited to talk about the appointment of our next CEO, Karen Lawson Burns. But before we do that, I want to do kind of the legal thing and have our Assistant General Counsel walk us through the terms of the contract, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Karen. So recognizing Nicholas Norvell, our Assistant General Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So under the Brown Act, before an agency can make a decision regarding the salary or benefits of local agency executives, the agency must have a verbal summary of the proposed action on salary and benefits. So before the board this evening, as previously announced following closed session, the board decided in closed session to appoint Karen Burns as Chief Executive Officer, subject to approval and execution of an employment agreement. As I mentioned earlier, a copy of the full employment agreement has now been posted to the website, and I'm going to provide some of the details regarding the proposed employment agreement. So the term would be would start on April 18th, 2022 and last for 3 years until April 17th, 2025. The base annual salary is $375,000. Severance, if there is termination without cause, is 6 months salary subject to compliance with the agreement conditions. An automobile allowance of $500 per month. Cell phone or technology allowance, either an SDCP provided cell phone and plan, or if none, a $100 technology allowance would be provided. And then relocation expense reimbursement with receipts for up to $50,000 for the purpose of travel, lodging, airfare, car rentals, and meals to and from San Diego in connection with relocation of Ms. Burns from Northern California to Southern California, as well as moving expenses and rental reimbursement. And the period of time that would be eligible for would be 8 months. And then finally, Ms. Burns, under the proposed employment agreement, would be eligible for participation in other SDCP benefits that are available to executives of SDCP, such as retirement plans and defined contribution plans, sick leave, vacation accrual, and any other benefits provided to SDCP executives.
All right. Well, thank you, Nicholas, for those terms. And this is just an exciting moment because I think this is a significant milestone in our organization. And, you know, when we first started the whole process of recruiting for our CEO, I really had hoped and really, you know, thought that we would find somebody who is extraordinary, that has amazing leadership abilities to lead this organization in the future. And there's so much going on. And at the end of the process, we found someone, and that's Karen. So she's amazing. Let me just tell you a little bit more about Karen. Most recently, she served as Vice President, National Corporate Strategy and Development for Franklin Energy, an organization that offers innovative energy efficiency, demand response, and grid optimization programs to utility customers and local governments nationwide. Prior to that, Karen was the Chief Executive Officer for Build It Green, an organization that offered innovative energy efficiency programs and technical expertise to California-based utilities, state and local government agencies. Professionally, Karen has been an active proponent of clean energy since at least 2010. Personally, Karen and her family walk the talk by making environmentally friendly choices at home and in their daily lives. Karen's educational pedigree is likewise exceptional. She earned a master's degree from Stanford and Harvard, was an honors student at Duke, and was a Fulbright fellow as an undergrad. Karen was a standout throughout the recruitment process, earning high marks from the board as well as the community advisory committee and staff members who participated in the final round of interviews. Finally, Karen is by all accounts an amazing leader. Those who have had the pleasure of working with her in the past had said many things, but a couple of things that they've said: talented and highly intelligent with a comprehensive understanding of best practices in the energy industry, relentless in the pursuit of her organization's mission, a leader with a great sense of purpose who effectively communicates to everyone around her, an individual finds creative solutions to unexpected problems, and an incredible hard worker and a lot of fun to be with and work with. And so it is just a pleasure to have Karen with us tonight. But just before I call on Karen to say a few words, I did want to just kind of call on, we have Cindy Krebs and Director Sotela Solis, who both were on the subcommittee or the ad hoc committee that for the recruiting process, and Cindy Krebs with our consulting firm of Alliance Consulting Group. She was the lead negotiator with us. And so I just want to give them a moment to talk about any of the process or anything like that they want to talk about.
Great. Well, I want to say bienvenida, Karen. We're very excited to have you part of the team. It was a very competitive process. Again, when you join, and I guess when you're one of the newer members to the board, they're like, hey, you have to join a committee. And then you have the chair saying, hey, we have this really cool committee. And I said, okay. But being part of the selection committee and the recruitment, or that whole process, has been amazing to really see the caliber of person that Karen is, and the skills and talents that she will be bringing to the organization, I think is incredible. We did start in early March, to sitting down and having conversations with the candidates, as we had reported out back in February. We really wanted to make sure that we had staff and CAC perspectives as well. And so, because everyone's perspective is really important, as we have our first permanent CEO in this role to help guide us, in the next really big decisions and places that we need to go. I want to thank my colleagues as part of the committee, and that was Bill Baber from La Mesa and Steve Padilla from the city of Chula Vista, who's vice chair here at SDCP. And again, it's really having the diversity of perspectives and knowing that we have a champion for energy, clean energy, in front of the meter and behind the meter, and really somebody who is going to champion our efforts. So very excited to welcome, again, bienvenida. You can have some tacos down in National City, or even lumpia if you're interested. We got you. I'll turn it over to Cindy. Cindy, if there's anything else you'd like to add.
I would only add that it has been a pleasure working with you all. Recruiting is an interesting industry, and I got into it late in my career, but when you get to create a match as good as this, it's so fulfilling, and I'm so happy for everybody, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
And I failed to mention, Chair Mosca, Cindy was amazing to work with. So we definitely want to keep her on speed dial. Not that anybody is leaving, just don't anybody get any ideas. But
Yeah.
she's she is somebody very strong.
We love
to help.
Cindy, but we don't want to see her quite that often. So,
No.
but yeah. but I think it's also important to have recruited somebody of this caliber too, because we have an amazing team. We have a very creative, high performing team, and so we need somebody that's gonna match that energy and allow us to kind of soar. And so that's who Karen is. And we found her up in Northern California, and she's now our CEO. And so Karen, please unmute yourself, and you have some time to kind of introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Those were very, very nice comments. I'm looking around saying, where is that person? So thank you, Chairman Mosca, and a heartfelt thank you to other members of the board, to Alliance Resource Consulting, to the SDCP executive team, and to the Community Advisory Committee. It is because of your support and your interest in working with me that I am here today. And it is a true honor and a pleasure to join SDCP as its incoming chief executive. And I'm humbled by this incredibly talented group of people that I get to work with. This is an organization that I am very excited to join because it brings together two of my longstanding passions, clean energy and community development. In my mind, the mission of SDCP is to deliver 100% clean power at an affordable cost to our customers, while at the same time ensuring that our workers and our communities can both participate in and benefit from the clean energy transition. So to lead this organization that I'm already passionate about, I'll just have to suffer through ugly beaches and terrible weather. It's a small price to pay. But seriously, thank you again. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you to realize our collective vision for San Diego's clean energy future. Chairman, back to you.
Thank you, Karen. Can't wait to start. We have a question from Director LaCava. Or a comment?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add, my thoughts as the last board member to join this group. I came in with a lot of questions about the process, not being familiar with all the work you had done to this part. But I found, as Director Solis said, a very thoughtful and meaningful process. The recruitment was top-notch. We definitely got very good candidates applying, which is good. Says a lot about the organization here, how excited people were. And I too am very excited that Karen applied and has agreed to accept our offer to do this job. We're still kind of in startup mode, but we're moving very fast. And so I hope, Karen, you're ready to hit the ground running. And then there's so many parts of why we all collectively formed a CCNA that we haven't really begun to tap into. And I know you'll be a terrific leader working with the amazing employees that we have recruited and will continue to recruit to work for this board. So I am very excited as well. And we have you heard about the excitement, and that comes with high expectations as well. But we know that you'll meet and exceed them along the way. So looking forward to working with you.
That sounds like a motion, Director LaCava.
Sure, I'll take that as a motion to appoint Karen Burns, CEO.
So the motion would be to adopt staff's recommendation to adopt resolution 2022-05. All right.
Thank you for being a little more precise there, Chair. I'll take that as my motion.
All right, do we have a second? All right, we have a second. Do we have any questions or comments by my fellow board members? Director Tadina.
No, I just wanted to echo everyone's comment. Welcome aboard, Karen, but also I said earlier to my colleagues on the board, I just wanted to thank, I was very impressed with the professional, transparent, and really comprehensive process to select Karen and identify a future CEO. I really want to thank the Community Advisory Committee, our board, our staff, Cindy, obviously, and the ad hoc committee. I just was really impressed with how this process went forward. It was really instructive for me. And it just reached the level that I hoped it would. And so I just want to thank everybody for their participation and really providing constructive, solid feedback. So welcome aboard, Karen, and just thanks to a wonderful collective team that we have that really put the mission of the organization first and foremost to identify a great CEO to lead us into the future. So thank you.
Great. Kimberly, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, there's no public comment.
All right, so we'll bring it back to the board. And yes, thank you to our Community Advisory Committee. Thank you to the Ad Hoc Committee. Thank you to Cindy Krebs. Job well done again, Cindy. And thank you to everyone for being a part of this process. We're successful. It was successful, so awesome. So we have a motion and a second on the table. Let's vote.
Director Humora, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Dedina, how do you vote?
Dedina, aye.
Director LaCava, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Lawson Remer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
Councilman John McCann for Chula Vista, aye.
Director Sotelo Solis, how do you vote?
Well then, Alejandra Refugio Sotelo Solis from the city of National City, aye.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
All right, I'll do the same. Joe Mosca from the city of Encinitas, yes.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
All right, well, thank you, Karen. Thank you, guys. So let's move to the next item, which is item number 13 and the second amendment to temporarily extend interim CEO employment agreement. And so you know that Bill Carnahan is our interim CEO, and Karen will start as of April 18th, and Bill's contract ends as of this month. So we need to extend this a little bit more so that we have a CEO running our organization. Nicholas, did you want to say anything about this contract, about this extension?
I'll just briefly say that the terms of the extension are basically that it would extend to the end of April of 2022 or the new CEO's employment date, which pursuant to the previous item is now April 18th. So the extension would effectively last through April 17th of this month.
I'll make a motion to approve item 13 as the second amendment to temporarily extend interim CEO employment agreement. And well, if there's a second, I'd just like to share my thoughts, Chair.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll second that motion. And do we have any questions or comments? Director Sotelo Solis.
Yeah, I just want to share that during my time here, Bill Carnahan, who has stepped into that interim role, has been very instrumental. Shedding light on both literally and figuratively on things that are happening within the organization, but also to just being able to really break things down. I think his over 30 years of experience, I think he shared with me, working in the, both public and here quasi-public-private entities. He's going to be missed, but we know that he's left us in good hands. And I know that we're going to have you on speed dial too if we have any questions. And I know that Karen will be able to use your expertise once she takes the helm. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Yeah, I'm going to propose that we have a time in the future to recognize Bill and everything that he's done for our organization. As somebody that has served with Bill from the very beginning, there have been a lot of milestones that we have achieved under Bill's tenure. And so definitely want to recognize you, Bill, for your help in getting us where we're at. And so thank you. Thank you from the ratepayers. Thank you for everything you've done for our organization to get us where we're at. This organization wouldn't be in the position it is without your experience and your help in getting us here. So thank you. And there's going to be a moment in the future where we can kind of show you even more love and let you know how much we appreciate you for stepping into this role on an interim basis. So thank you. And also leading, helping us lead this executive recruiting process, which has found us Karen, which is who's going to take us into the future. So any other questions on item number 13? Kimberly, do we have any members of the public that that are seeking to comment on this item?
No.
All right, let's bring it back to the board. So we have a motion and a second. If there are no more questions, I'm going to just ask that we vote. All right, let's vote.
Director Humora, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Dedina, how do you vote?
Dedina, aye.
Director LaCava, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Lawson Reamer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
Councilmember John McCann, Chula Vista votes. Did you hear me?
Was that a yes?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
Oh, I
That's it.
voted yes too. Sotelo Solis, aye.
Oh, did I skip you?
It's okay, but I'll cast my vote now.
All right, I've got you as a yes.
All right, let's move to item number 14, discussion on location and format of upcoming meetings. And Bill Carnahan and Nick, are you guys taking this item?
Yes, we are. Do you want me to lead it off, Bill?
Oh, I've got it. I was trying to find my unmute button, and every time that's difficult for me to walk and chew gum at the same time, I guess. But yes, we've had a number of folks, and of course, everyone is interested in when are we going to be back on the road to having quote unquote normal meetings where folks can see each other face to face, and the public can interact with you all in the deliberations that you undertake. And what we have done tonight, since the status quo continues to exist, even though we are moving, I think, to more openness, and some of you have begun to think about that both here at SDCP and within your own cities, because you're subject to the same kinds of restrictions. And we're really not asking you for a vote tonight. What we want to do is lay out where we are, where we think we're going, some of the possible iterations that it might take on, and then perhaps if you're interested in actually locations that we might use in the future. Kimberly has done some research on that as well. So we thought we'd take about 5 minutes in the meeting and just sort of bring you all up to date, get your ideas. How do you want to proceed after tonight? If you want to give us some different directions. So I guess I would start. Nicholas actually took a look at 361 and what might happen down the road in terms of 4 options, I think, of scenarios that might occur either all alone or sequentially or in some form, and to give you some idea of what we might be able to do under each of those. And then we'll start talking about beyond that, what your feelings and feedback are. And then like I say, we don't have to vote. We'll just take your input, and when the time comes, when there is a movement in the implementation or de-implementation of 361, we would come back to you with some options and then ask for a vote. So with that, Nicholas, you want to start?
Sure, thanks, Bill. So as you all know, SDCP, as have many public agencies, have been holding their meetings for the past few months pursuant to AB 361, which is adopted by the legislature in the fall, and authorizes fully or partially teleconference meetings to occur without listing the locations from where the teleconference is occurring or needing to post the agenda at all of those locations, et cetera. What are part of the normal Brown Act rules. The conditions for holding those meetings are still in effect. There is still a declaration of a state of emergency, and there are still aspects of social distancing that are being recommended by state or local authorities. So SDCP is able to continue holding its meetings in this format or something similar to this format for the time being. That could change at some point. For example, if the governor withdrew the declaration of the state of emergency, or there was no longer recommendation for social distancing, et cetera. However, we wanted to be able to talk about the potential choices that the board has, as well as sort of timing for those potential choices. So essentially, the 4 choices are: number 1, to continue holding meetings in this exact format for the time being, which is fully remote, no one in person, whether staff board members or the public. Number two is to hold a hybrid virtual meeting that would allow board members and maybe some staff to be in person or remote, but members of the public would still participate remotely. Those would still be held pursuant to AB 361 and allow full public participation. The third option is to hold a hybrid virtual meeting where board members and staff and the public have the opportunity to attend in person or virtually via AB 361. And then number four, going back to fully in-person meetings where none of the board members or staff or members of the public would attend remotely. It's sort of a traditional public meeting. So that's sort of the lay of the land in terms of the various options. And like I said, I think part of this is just staff seeking direction and what the board's interests are in this area, and if the board has ideas on timing.
All right. So just kind of looking at the slide that we have up here. So before pandemic, we were meeting at the City Hall in San Diego. So are they now meeting back in person, and can we use their city council chamber for our meetings? It looks like it says meeting before ends at 5.
Chair, I'll jump in. A couple of thoughts. We do occasionally, so let me start back. So the city council is actually meeting in person in the chambers. The public is not. Notwithstanding what might happen with COVID, we probably will allow public to come into chambers mid-April. That's kind of the target that we're looking at. It's not locked in yet. The mayor and the council president haven't officially said that, but that's what we're looking at. Depending on some of the community power board meetings, there is a conflict that there is a committee meeting beforehand that it may end at 4 o'clock, it may end at 5 o'clock, depending on that committee's agenda. You also see the committee room. The committee room is being converted to allow hybrid meetings. Unfortunately, due to supply chain issues, they're estimating they won't have that room converted to be able to operate as hybrid until August. So the committee room's a little bit small with 7 members now and the CEO and the council and stuff. So it really needs to be the board chambers. So, we can get back to you to understand, as you know, we're also busy in terms of adjusting the legislative calendar is a little bit tough. But we can circle back once the decision is made to allow the public to actually attend. But we are meeting physically in person as a city council. So, and I'll double check on those conflicts as well to better understand.
So if we lean towards San Diego, wanting to go back to where we were, just for the interim, because we'll obviously seek to have our own space in the future. But if we're looking at City of San Diego, then we probably should stay virtual for a month more or so.
At least from the city's point of view, yes.
All right, and then County of San Diego. So is this downtown? They have a huge facility down in Kearny Mesa, and they have a boardroom there that I've been to before that really looks wide open. And generally they have big parking garages there. It's right off the freeway. I mean, it's generally, it looks like a really good spot. And so when we look at the County of San Diego, this is downtown, well, it says downtown San Diego. How come we're not looking at Kearny Mesa?
Chair Mosca, I have not been able to get a response back from any of the people that handle that facility through email or phone call. So if someone has a contact person there or knows someone, but I haven't been able to get in touch with anyone who handles their facilities.
Director Lawson Reamer, do you think that it would be a possibility for us to kind of look at that as an option?
I don't know why not. I mean, we're in person, so I think yeah, there's no reason that I know of that you have not been able to get a response, but I don't want to speak out of turn.
Can we have somebody on your staff touch base with Kimberly so that maybe we can kind of get an answer and see if it works for us and works for the county as well?
Definitely. Kimberly, the person is Giselle So the person that you interface with regarding scheduling, she's
Right.
also the right person to sort of talk to about how to navigate facilities.
Okay, yeah, well, she sent me the name of the person that handles the downtown facility, but he doesn't handle the one that we're talking about. And so he sent me to their website and to access their facilities contact. And that's where I ended up after talking to your, to Jocelyn and the gentleman she put me in touch with.
To ask her for the Kearney Mesa facility instead of the downtown facility.
And then the other thing too is that we've, Bill, prior to the COVID, we basically, we kind of meandered throughout the cities, member agencies. We met down in Chula Vista once or twice. We met in IB once or twice. We met in Encinitas. You know, the city of San Diego and county's facilities are obviously central. And so I don't know if we want to even think about if we're going to do hybrid or back in person. We should look at all of the various member agencies, what they have in terms of facilities. And Encinitas would always be happy to host, and I'll make sure they host. It's really good for me and probably Tara, but it's probably not good for everyone else because we're so far north. But would love to
host too.
Yeah, and I love Chula Vista's facility. It's far down there.
Well, that's really, if I might add, that's really the kind of feedback that we need. We do know that there was a checkerboard kind of approach to begin with, and moving the meetings around, and then it sort of landed in one place. I think that was perhaps more centrally located. So, you know, staff will participate wherever you all choose. So it's really your decision as to whether you want to rotate, lock in on one or two, or anything like that. That's the kind of feedback we're looking for tonight.
I think it was confusing to the public. I think it was confusing to folks that would be coming to our meeting that we were rotating all the time. I think that was the kind of the idea that we would have, like, go rotate with member agencies, and that would kind of give everybody, like, it's your organization, the feel for like, this is your organization. It's about Chula Vista, it's about La Mesa, San Diego, but I think it was confusing where we were going to meet, and so we just kind of settled in San Diego because it was right there near the transit lines and it was centrally located. So, anyways, I think that this issue is kind of they're two different questions, but they're kind of blending. So let me go to my colleagues here. I don't know who put their hand up first, but I'll call on Director Sotelo Solis, and then Lawson, Reamer, and Dedina.
I think Reamer had her hand up first. I'll go second, if you're okay
Director
with
Lawson,
that.
Reamer.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Sotelo. A couple things. I think I just want to highlight my main interest, which is continuing to, at the very least, allow hybrid. I think it's really important, obviously, for the public to be able to participate. I think it's, one of the good things that's come out of the last couple of years is people being able to participate even if they couldn't make it physically to a meeting. So continuing to allow public participation for folks who can't show up in person, I think, is really important. But I would also say I think it's really important for board members. I'll just speak for myself. I don't know if I would be able to be on this board if I'd have to be in person. I often, almost always, have my daughter at 5 o'clock on a Thursday. And if I don't have her, I'm probably stuck in traffic in Encinitas. So I think it's really difficult for working moms to make meetings that happen after 5. So I think it would be very difficult for me to participate if our meetings were not, if I couldn't participate virtually, so that she can color in her coloring books while I participate in this important work for the public. So I think those are some kind of initial thoughts. In terms of location, I do think that becomes, frankly, a little bit less important if we do continue to allow hybrid, because then we're creating accessibility using technology instead of being stuck, asking people to be stuck in traffic for multiple hours at the end of the day to make it to this meeting.
Those are some really good comments. Bill, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, I'll wait till after the directors.
All right, Director Sotelo Solis.
Gracias, Chair. I think that a hybrid up until AB 361 has been exhausted, I think is good. I think just for the public to know that this is how they can still give public comment, needs to be clear. So Rita's team needs to have it all out there. You know, things aren't changing. This is exactly how it is with steps 1 through 5 or 1, 2, and 3. Second is locations. I know that we talk about, I would actually like to see is, as opposed to a rotating month, maybe it's 6 months at a time, where 6 months it's a northern community, 6 months it's a southern community, 6 months it's a northern, southern, or east, north, whatever way we want to do it, just so we also get to see council chambers. I've never gone to Encinitas City Council. I've been to Imperial Beach, but real quick. You know, I've gone to the county, and I think it would be good, again, to that ownership piece. And maybe as part of that, we highlight opportunities and build in kind of what's happening in the community that staff can kind of help us highlight as part of the formal agenda that is happening. If there's some battery storage or there's a new technology that would facilitate, you know, the speaker or something of that nature. It's part of the agenda. And, but however, in the interim, we do have another organization that regionally does have space, and that's Sandag. I mean, as long as we don't do it on a Friday, because that's like Sandag Friday, who knows, maybe that's even a middle ground. Most, as we start transitioning back in place, I think that it's important to just check that out, you know, as partners. So thank you, Chair.
Those are some good comments too. Kimberly, maybe put on the list looking at Sandag's offices as well. And I think we always thought too that when we had specific issues on the agenda, especially rate moments, annual rate, and kind of looking at our rates, setting our rates, that we would kind of move the board meetings around to different member agencies. And so, so I think that those are some good ideas about, you know, should we kind of go back to just kind of rotating maybe every 6 months or so? I mean, that's something that we can look at. Director Jadina?
Yeah, no, all good comments. Yeah, I think we started hybrid Imperial Beach, and it's clear people are coming in and calling in. Number two, I like the idea of a location, if it's downtown or if you're talking about Kearney Mesa, a place that has plenty of, you know, parking, and then also obviously can accommodate the public. My own experience with nonprofit meetings and trying to find spaces is the more we moved, the less participation and more confusing it got. So as much as I appreciate having a potential regional approach, it's complicated enough to do these things. And the more you identify new places, people get confused. And there are people that like to go to these meetings, you know, as part of their sort of civic culture. So I would argue, you know, the more we can find a permanent location, it just becomes more of an institutional. But, you know, if the board decides to move around, that's fine. I do know I just came from Encinitas before I got on this call, and it's not something you know, it's challenging, right? Like to go from the north end of the county to the south end. So, and vice versa, right? You know, Chula Vista South on an afternoon, Thursday afternoon is a tough slog, as we all know. So for those of us in the south know. So that's my feedback. But I'd like to get it done as soon as possible. Hopefully we can get that moving. Thanks.
All right, Director Himura, welcome to our meeting, and thank you for being here, representing the great city of La Mesa.
Appreciate it. I think we had the first meeting in La Mesa, didn't we?
We did. We did. I still have that picture actually right behind me right now. Yeah, we swore in the first board in La Mesa.
And we're still willing to host if necessary and ready to go. So, but I agree with the other director's comments that keeping the hybrid option allows for the most people to participate, particularly for the public and the staff, and it really allows greater participation. And the second thing I wanted to say is that I'm not sure if they have cameras in Zoom, but the City of San Diego's Public Utilities Department, the Metropolitan Operations Center in Kearney Mesa, that's where Metro Wastewater JPA meets. And it's it's in Kearney Mesa, so it's central, but that's a good location that's not heavily used. So that might be something worth exploring as well.
All right. Kimberly, do we have any public comments in this item?
No, but okay, nope, no more comments.
All right, we'll bring it back to the board. So those are some really good comments. Bill, did you need any other information? Because it sounds like we're open to hybrid, not completely in person, but perhaps hybrid for April. But I think the idea is like, where are we going to meet? But I think if it's hybrid, I think that what Director Lawson Reamer is saying is probably right on, which is, does it really matter how much, where the location is? If we're basically going to stay, if we're hybrid, then it's really kind of that virtual setting. Then a few of us maybe are kind of at that some of us that want to be in person are at that location. So I think the actual discussion of where we meet is going to be critically important as we kind of, as the governor's order is lifted and we do go back to in person, where that's going to be at. It sounds like kind of a central location, and then that there's some idea, some thought of wanting to kind of move around for kind of community, make sure that people feel like this is their organization. And so having perhaps moments where we kind of go to different communities, but for the most part in one location. Let's go to another round of comments from our fellow directors. So Director Sotelo Solis.
Thank you, Chair. So I have a couple thoughts. So as we start expanding our footprint as to whether it's where we're meeting, and if we're really wanting to engage our community, and there may be a desire to partner with a nonprofit that provides childcare, if the site so allows for that, and has a side room where we get, professionals. Again, this is post, once we get officially lifted from the emergency orders and, the COVID-19 restrictions are lifted. But that might be something, as I know other organizations do that, and have childcare provided. But the second point is bilingual translation. I don't know that we have it here as part of the Zoom capacity, but as we really go into the residential component, and I know we're rolling it out, so we have a lot of opportunity for growth, but if there is that bilingual capacity via Zoom, and even when we go in person, I know there are interpreters that will go from English to Spanish, and then even from Spanish to English, because at one point in our council chambers, we did have people say not nice things in Spanish, and the staff was like, they said they have really a difficult time with cis staff person, and they didn't want to talk bad to the council about how horrible they were. And so I think just having a neutral party be able to provide those services, and it really just shows that inclusivity of those folks, both the translation and interpretive services, as well as, members of the public feeling like if there is a child care issue and or translation or a language barrier, again, these are all investments that I think then set the minimum bar for other organizations. And I think since we're still in that formation, we can set it now and make it par for the course, for others to follow. And having come back from that Yosemite conference, having heard another organization, 4 letters, starts with S, ends with D, rhymes with schmud, and hearing how wonderful they are, I want us to have that same level of respect from the community. And I think by setting the bar with these other, and it's not amenity, it's what people need in order to engage. And again, hybrid model does allow for that, but then there's some people who don't even have the internet, still, or good connection. So maybe the in-person, but childcare would be their option. But anywho, those are my thoughts. Lots of ways to engage on various levels. Thanks.
Thank you, Director. And SMUD is a Sacramento municipal utility, is a great thing for us to aspire to. Awesome organization. Director Lawson Reamer.
Yeah, just I just want to comment. We've been doing hybrid for a long time now. I think all of us have a lot of experience with it. I think my one comment as staff looks for a location is that it seems more important that it actually is equipped appropriately so that there's screens that you can interact with and actually video the individual other board members in a way that allows appropriate interaction between board members and the public, rather than the actual location. I think that what I've seen this go awry is when you have 3 board members in a room and 1 video camera, and it becomes really difficult to make that into an interactive conversation that's transparent and allows for a real exchange. Making sure that there's the setup facilitates a remote interaction is really important. So I'm happy to explain that more if that wasn't clear. So let me just pause for staff and see if that was helpful or clear, or if I need to explain a little bit more what I need.
Bill?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think the experience we went through and in terms of the interview process recently concluded showed that it was difficult for some folks to hear. There certainly needed to be more mics spread out, and so that's a takeaway I also had from that process, is that we need to make sure that communications and the ability to communicate is paramount, because if you miss something critical, then you could take the meeting in a totally different direction. So I appreciate that comment, and we'll take that into account as we go.
Yeah, I think obviously I have my limited experience, as we all do, but the way that the supervisors set up, the board of supervisors set up hybrid over the last couple of years has worked extremely well. It almost felt like people were in the room, even if they were not in the room. They had like their own giant monitor, I think bigger than the people who were in the room, kind of sat around the table. So it really didn't feel like there was any difference between being present and not being present. So I don't know if you wanted to come check this out, set up over here, but I think it worked extremely well.
Yeah, good.
We want to do more than check it out. We want to take over those offices.
Oh no, what are we doing? What have I got ourselves into?
Director LaCava?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director Humar, for reminding me about what we call Mach 2. Unfortunately, that has not been set up for a hybrid, but it is a great space when we're fully in person, which as we've heard, everybody I think wants to still preserve that hybrid. I'm going to throw out one other consideration at the risk of gathering Kimberly's wrath, perhaps my colleagues. It may be that the only challenge with the city of San Diego, if that has other pluses, whether the board would be willing to entertain changing some of its board meeting dates. It looks like that conflict that's mentioned on the slide happens about half the time. So if everything else falls into place and that's the only deal killer, perhaps we can add that to the conversation. So, and I know changing board dates is a big deal. So I don't put that out there lightly, but yeah, I think we're getting very close to be able to have the public actually show up in person, in addition to running a very well organized a hybrid meeting. Maybe not up to the county standards, as member Lost-Reamer said, but it is working very well. And we've had translation services that perhaps we could make available as well. They don't come inexpensive, of course, but it can be really critical for that community outreach, as member Sotelo Solis pointed out. So I'll just throw that on the table and leave it at that.
Perfect. All right. Well, the date's not etched in stone. I mean, we don't want to move it all the time, but it's not etched in stone. So I'll leave that to staff, that, that's something that's potentially an option if we're looking around and we think that City of San Diego's facilities are, really key, and we can find a different date, maybe, kind of send out some sort of poll to the members and see, what time and date works best for them. Thursday was not always the best day for me because I'm on the County Water Authority, and we have, you guys may know that the board meeting goes all day from 9 o'clock in the morning until 3 or 4. It's never been an issue for the last couple of years because we've been virtual. But if it was in person, running from Kearney Mesa, where our facilities are, to wherever this is going to be a hard haul. And so, I'm open to changing. So I guess we would, just do a poll to see, Kimberly, to see if it's necessary, if that opens up other options. All right, so it seems like we've talked about this a lot. Do you guys have enough feedback from us?
Yes, I think so. My only fear is that they may try to make the change or make an implementation change in less than 30 days. As long as we have a board meeting in between, to sort of phase in what we're going to do, so we can put it together, bring it to you all, have it blessed, and then go with it. That's really the only concern I have. I think there's options here. There's 2 or 3 probably that would work. Just a matter of which one's the best and what meets everybody's needs. So we have a lot to think about. We need to do some more research, and we'll try to keep up to speed on how events are changing so that we can get ahead of it as much as we can. And we appreciate the opportunity to get that feedback today.
All right, perfect. And then Nick, you'll just keep the order on the agenda for next month too, because I mean we would have to broach that anyways.
Absolutely. Any of the hybrid options would also need the AB 361 findings, so it would continue to remain on at least every 30 days.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's move to our next item. I see Byron coming up on the screen there. So let's move to the next item, item number 15, approval of energy proposal evaluation criteria. And this is Byron Vosberg, our Director of Power Services.
Great. Thank you, Chair, and good evening, directors. Thanks, Kimberly. So I will jump into this here with an evaluation criteria for you all to review for how we select our long-term power contracts. I've got a little bit of background here. Again, there's a bit of a pivot, but we can create one of these for an evaluation criteria for meeting locations too, if you'd like. That would be helpful. But for power contracts, the background here, obviously, we do go out and do a good bit of contracting for long-term contracts. You're probably familiar. Those of you who have been around through from the beginning, remember the renewable RFO from 2020. We'll have another few RFOs similar to that coming up here before too long. And then we've also had the local RFI that we issued last summer, last fall. And so, that's kind of how we do most of our contracting, especially for long-term and new build resources. So to date, we've had an evaluation criteria in use that's kind of been our interim evaluation criteria. We've used that as staff review each of the proposals and present to the ad hoc contracts committee. And then obviously, with review with the ad hoc contracts committee, that's kind of been our basis for evaluation of these projects and ranking and sorting and shortlisting and selecting for which ones to move forward with and contract. So the purpose here, just to be clear, of the evaluation criteria is to provide a tool, kind of a screen, so to speak, to come up with a common rubric to rate any of these proposals that we receive for projects or transactions to move forward. It's not an end-all be-all. So all of these contracts, all of these, any transaction we're entering into, any of these projects, obviously still come back to committees for review and still come back to board approval. So it's the screening process as we go through the initial review, and we do that in conjunction with the contracts committee. But it's not kind of the final end all be all, and there is still board and committee review beyond that. So what we're hoping to do tonight is work with you to formalize an evaluation criteria. As I mentioned before, we've had an interim evaluation criteria, so we just like to, propose a formal one and kind of an official evaluation criteria. Obviously, that can change over time, and we can, review and adapt as appropriate down the road as we put it into use. But we've basically started with our interim evaluation criteria, and we've reviewed that with a number of stakeholders, with the community advisory committee, with the FRMC, with the finance and risk management committee. We've talked to some folks in the development side as well, and try to get kind of a wide range just to beat it up a little bit and get some feedback. And so we've made some tweaks here and there as well to improve it, but largely it's based pretty closely to our interim evaluation criteria. I see a hand up.
I'll
Director,
wait
go ahead.
until your presentation's over.
Oh, okay, sounds good. So that's what we're here to do, is to present to you all. You know, again, it looks pretty similar to what we've used in the past. So those of you who have been in those discussions in the ad hoc committee or otherwise, probably going to look familiar. But hopefully here to propose something that we can use formally going forward. Next slide, please, Kimberly. Thank you. So again, the proposal here is to establish an energy proposal evaluation criteria to score proposals for long-term and wholesale energy contracts. So again, just kind of setting expectations, right? The long-term 10-year, 15, 20-year deals that we have for wholesale contracts. So, you know, the big projects that we're signing. You know, this also, I think all of the, you know, all the themes and preferences obviously in this evaluation criteria are consistent with, you know, everything we'll use throughout any resource contract, even short-term contracts. All these preferences here will still be at play and guide our contracting, guide our selection. But obviously it's not something we want to feel the need to use in every single decision, every single RFO for, you know, a month of power or capacity here or there. So this is for the long-term wholesale energy contracts. Also note that we may, on solicitation by solicitation basis, modify it as we have specific goals. If we're going out for one specific product or one resource or one type of contract, we may need to change it on a solicitation by solicitation basis. But that's kind of the broad framework here for what we're looking to adopt, subject to further adaptation. And then the evaluation criteria has these 6 areas below, and we'll walk through those in just a minute. And each of those will be ranked on a high, medium, neutral, or low scale. So there's a bit of a hybrid approach here to the quantitative, but also the qualitative approach to scoring each of these. And again, it's a holistic review of all of them together, both staff and then in conjunction with the contracts committee as well, as we do that. So I'll get into each of these 6 as we move forward here in a minute. Kimberly, next slide, please. And just to kind of set the expectations here and frame it a little bit. Just to show you an example of how we might use this, right? And I think, again, those of you who have been involved in contracts committees probably looks pretty familiar. This is just illustrative. We made up locations and prices and all this. So this doesn't reflect anything actually in the portfolio, but looks similar to what we've done in the past. To take each of these projects and rank them across these 6 different areas, and then filter so those with the most highs and mediums as opposed to neutrals and lows filter to the top, and those with the lower scores drift toward the bottom. And so this, again, it's proved to be a pretty successful process that we've used to date. And so I think we'd like to propose to you something similar, again, subject to any feedback you all have and suggestions, but and adaptation over time as we use it as well. Next slide, please. So the first area here, and I'll dive into these again, these 6 items, one slide each, and I'm happy to take questions or comments now, or again, hold them until the end. But feel free to jump in at any time to interrupt my voice if don't be shy. But on project location, again, we're being consistent with what we've done in the past. So to score high in the project location category, we went local resources. Obviously, I think that goes without saying. And we define that as San Diego County or Imperial County for renewable projects. And then for energy storage or kind of standalone capacity projects, we define that as San Diego local RA, San Diego Imperial Valley local RA. It's a little different, and it's a technicality based on kind of how those resources qualify for RA, but largely speaking, it's just about synonymous with in San Diego County, just that the jurisdictional boundaries, I guess, are a little different than the electoral ones of San Diego's grid, but it's pretty similar. So that's the high score. The medium score then is Southern California, right? So in neighboring counties a little farther, we've drawn the line, I think, pretty typically. San Luis Obispo, Kern, and San Bernardino counties. There's a nice straight line across the middle-ish of the state. There and below be considered Southern California, and then above would be Northern California. The neutral score here is located in California, but outside of the Southern California range. And then, or again, there are some projects that are directly interconnected to the California ISO. And so those, even if they're just outside the border, can directly interconnect but those are still, renewable resources of kind of the highest quality with product category number 1. So PCC1 renewables and bundled RECs. So those still qualify. And so we propose to include those kind of on the same bar as the in-state but out of Southern California resources. And then lowest obviously would be out-of-state projects that are not interconnected directly to the CAISO. I'll keep moving again on slide by slide, but feel free to pause me here if you have any questions on any of this.
So when if it's low and it's out of state, so I think that the wind that we got from New Mexico was higher than low. So it somehow they had some sort of interconnect.
So under this framework, I don't, and I wasn't around during that. I don't know that we've gone back to kind of re-rank those processes. I think under this evaluation criteria, I think out-of-state wind would be in the low category. Not to say that we wouldn't select it again if they're if it ranks high across the board elsewhere or has other compelling or offsetting factors. I think we could also work to clarify the interconnection to CAISO, right? I think it's not technically directly interconnected to CAISO, but it is dynamically scheduled into California. So there could be, I think we could discuss whether or not we want to, how we want to, I guess, draw that line between neutral and low for out-of-state projects and get into the weeds on whether they're directly interconnected or dynamically scheduled or pseudo-tied. I think we could discuss that, Chair.
All right. I had 2 or 3 questions, but you just answered all of them.
Okay, well, perfect.
That was good.
Get lucky every now and then.
All right, thank you.
Or maybe great minds that think alike, if I can be so.
I'm not. You're the great one on this.
Not at all. Let's keep moving unless there are any questions. So the next one here is the quantitative value. And again, this will vary product by product, depending on what we're looking for. Sometimes it's just an energy value. Sometimes it's just kind of a compliance value or a capacity value. But really what we're looking for here is kind of the cost that will be borne by customers. Most of the time, obviously going to be reducing cost and reducing risk, and we like that. So it will take into obviously consideration the contract price that we pay, the products that are offered or included, change the valuation of each product or each project, the value then of SDCP customers, the impact to our risk, and is it really offsetting market risk and by how much, and then also at the suggestion of Director Dina, I think also including a cost effectiveness metric here of project related greenhouse gas emission reductions. So we can really look at this and then think about, okay, we're paying X per megawatt hour. Here's the risk it's offsetting. Here's the cost. But I think also saying, hey, if we're going to spend our money on projects that are reducing greenhouse gases, how well are we doing that? And how do these each stack up against each other just from a greenhouse gas emissions kind of productivity or effectiveness or efficiency perspective. So though I think that's a great addition, I think, to this. And so we'll score all of those. Usually it's kind of like a net market value or a net present value of net market value that we'll use to try to get this is probably the one where we'll rank quantitatively most clearly, and then group it kind of into a high, medium, low value based on that. I see another hand up, Directors Satellis Lace.
I'll wait, like
Okay.
Supervisor Terlace Reaver. I got some for you.
Okay, that sounds fine. Save them all up.
So some of the stuff is so technical. If you wanted to ask your question as Byron's going along, that's fine with me.
Okay. Okay. Then what I would want to know is, we say value to SDCP customers. How are we? What does that mean?
Yeah, great question. And within the realm of this one area, this is truly just kind of financial economic value to our portfolio. And so there are other slides we'll get to in a minute for to community benefits and so that those are kind of separate from this. This is purely just the financial. How much are we going to pay? How much are we going to receive?
This is the finance and the economics of it. It's not the feel good portion. And the cost effectiveness of project related GHG emission reductions. How are we measuring that? What are we comparing it to? Like pre SDCP, or what's the comparison?
Yeah, it's a good question. And we're still looking through, I guess, probably the specific calculations we're going to use for each of these, but I think they're, it's high level. We should be able to, for each project, kind of make, do a calculation around estimated greenhouse gas reductions from this project coming online, and then kind of look at the cost that we're incurring to do that. And then each one by each one, we'll be able to see, okay, how much are we paying for each megawatt hour of this? And I think that this is probably where I think I will see this kind of come into play is, some of the larger scale projects that have economies of scale and can really, offset more. They may score better there. And so it'll be, I think, an interesting way to tease that out. There are also obviously a lot of benefits to having local and smaller projects, in the kind of the urban footprint or on previously developed land. And I think we'll want to, take that into consideration as well. They may not score quite as well, just on a dollar for dollar or megawatt hour or GHG metric ton score. But it'll be, I think it's good to keep in mind to be mindful as one of our core missions here is really to reduce emissions, to make sure that as we choose to spend our money, that we're really doing it to have the most impact.
Okay, because that was going to be my third question. How do we know that we've been successful in this? Money is one thing and how we compare, but as you said, the core value of if it's a local project, and just some of those mom and pops might be able to do more. Not that there's mom and pop in energy, but that there's but that it's closer to home. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Byron.
Okay. So I'll keep moving, Kimberly, but again, feel free to chime in with questions and we can bounce around as questions come up as well. So project development here, and this is really we'll be ranking categorizing kind of high, medium, low. This really is it's kind of a risk management perspective from us as we sign contracts to make sure these resources are going to come online. So, the last thing we want is to lock in a significant portion of our portfolio and to make commitments on our end and preclude ourselves from taking other opportunities, other resources, because we have a resource here and then 2-3 years down the road that they don't show up, right? So this is really about seeing how far along the development process the project is. Does it have site control? Does it have its interconnection applications in already? Where is it in the permitting process? And then where is it on the financing side? Do they have financing? Are they still securing it? And then, the development team and the organization itself, have they done this before? Are they a well-established and reputable shop? Or is this a newer organization, that may need some help from us or may need a little help along the way? Not that we would preclude that, right? I think, but it's good to be mindful. And as we make these decisions, there could be reasons to work with, again, smaller, newer entries into the field or into the area. Certainly the case. We don't want to exclude those folks, but it could be mindful, again, about the likelihood of this project coming online. And kind of knowing the steps between signing the contract and the 2 years until it's online, what that's going to take and the likelihood of success.
So interconnection status, it's obviously critically important. But so if a project like it appears that there's room for kind of energy storage, but there's no interconnection. How do we have any control over interconnection? Can we advocate? I mean, who decides what's if it's not interconnected, who decides something's interconnected? And then more importantly, that it would be rate-based and not necessarily on the developer to kind of pay for the interconnection.
Right, and it's a great question, Chair. And unfortunately, we're kind of at the whims here of the interconnection agency. In local area, that's going to be SDG&E, and elsewhere in the state, it's going to be SCE and PG&E and their interconnection sides. Those sides of the house are independent of obviously their procurement teams and their policy teams and all that. When we look at it from our perspective, the question for us usually is how far along in the process are you with the interconnecting utility? If you've submitted your application, done your studies, and got a cost of interconnection upgrades, that's usually a pretty good sign that you have an idea of how much it's going to cost to interconnect, and you factored it into your mathematics and in your offer to us. If some developers, we've submitted the application, but we haven't heard back yet, that introduces a whole lot. That introduces a whole lot more question, right? Are you going to be free and easy? Is it going to be a $10 million upgrade, right, to get you interconnected? And so, again, not to say that that's necessarily we would exclude anyone just on those grounds, but it certainly gives us a much better idea of where they are and the likelihood that they'll be able to, achieve the project on the timelines they propose.
So just one last question, because I think it's important that we have some influence over this. When we look at kind of the region as a whole, like how do we sit down with SDG&E? Is there some point, like if they're doing planning and they say, well, we need more generation in this area, we need more storage in this area, like how are we part of that conversation, that kind of holistic conversation about that planning for the area, so that you know, they were all kind of working seamlessly together?
Yeah, and
Are you invited into the conversation? Is some like, how do we become part of this conversation?
We typically aren't. That's typically kind of on the developer side to investigate, to kind of discuss. You know, it is a tough balance to draw too, right? The interconnecting utilities need to be independent and indifferent, right? Need to treat each request independently as they come along. But at the same time, they've got to work quickly, right? And there's even a lot of importance placed in this recently. The PUC, Public Utilities Commission, and the governor's office have been kind of working to stand up a task force to say, hey, how are we going to get projects online? We got some supply chain delays going on, but you know, we are transitioning our grid quickly from a fossil fuel based grid to a more clean energy based grid, and we need these projects online, and interconnection should not be the issue. So they're working. There is a lot of emphasis placed on this right now. It's not really an area that we are directly involved in, but we are kind of impacted downstream, kind of a consumer of it, so to speak, and then have an indirect view into it via our work with the developers.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, let's keep moving, Kimberly, but again, directors, feel free to chime in. So again, getting to the beyond just the financial impacts here, trying to define some of the other preferences, obviously, that are core to what we are and what we're doing here. Community benefits is the first one, and there are a few really long words here that we tried to define a little more clearly. But the first here in the high for community benefits is to locate the project in a disadvantaged community or community of concern, or a region that's otherwise designated as a high priority area for renewable energy development. So that, again, I'm not aware of any kind of renewable energy development zones in San Diego County yet, but other counties do have these regions where they've said, hey, here is where we really want to encourage renewable energy development, the solar energy zone, those kind of things. Riverside has one as well, where they really are trying to encourage development in certain areas and maybe not in others. But I think if it's in one of these areas, it's kind of going to be necessary for the high score. In addition to that, to demonstrate community outreach, and that the developer has worked with the community, especially in those that are located in closer to the urban environment, that they've done their outreach and communicated with those with their neighbors, so to speak, and then also demonstrating compelling community benefits. And so I'll get to that in a minute as well. But that's kind of the high score. If it checks all those boxes, then it'll get a high rating. I think both on the community outreach and the community benefits, I think those are two areas where we're looking to set a framework here that we may further develop down the road. I think obviously in any RFO we'll have a clear request or requirement that the developers speak to community outreach and community benefits. I think what we'd like to do and propose to do as well is, moving forward from here, would be to work with you all and the Community Advisory Committee and others to kind of come up with especially on the community benefits side of things, what I'm calling a pre-approved community benefits plan, kind of like a pre-approved vendor list, but really a suggestion list for developers who really want to have impacts in our community. If we can give them ideas, I think it's that much easier to say, hey, this is what we're looking for in certain communities. Here's where we can direct you, and here are ideas. Some of our developers are going to be local and are going to have a really good handle on the community and the people we work with and around. A lot of them may not. They may be out of state, or they may be kind of national developers, and they say, hey, how can I make an impact in your community? It'd be really great. And they have a good bit of interest in doing that, certainly to win our business. So I think to be able to point them and say, hey, here's what we're looking for, and here's how you can demonstrate commitment to us, to kind of work to develop that list, I think would be key. So we don't have that at this time, but we look to kind of work with you all and the CAC again moving forward to develop that.
All And I wonder within the next item, community power plan, whether we would be looking at if any of our member agencies would want to have a renewable energy development zone, whether that's something that would come up with, like, say we're looking at that community power plan and we're kind of thinking about Encinitas and we're exploring and outreaching and it comes up in that way. Anyways, maybe that's another possibility for exploring further these kind of renewable energy development zones for any of our member agencies. I know that this item, community benefits, is of particular importance to Director Lawson-Remer. And I'm wondering, since it's really not kind of, we haven't really delved into it too much, I'm wondering if we can maybe, like, I'll open this up to the board and just a suggestion that maybe we can talk about it more, maybe an ad hoc committee of a few people just to kind of dive a little bit deeper into this and come up with some proposal for us at a future meeting. But I'll just throw that out there because I do think it needs to be kind of delved into a little bit more.
Yep, I completely agree, Chair, and I think again, future development of what specifically we're looking for here is going to be key. Any solicitations in the meantime, we'll obviously be asking developers and proposers or suppliers to speak to what they want to contribute to the community.
Right.
But I think especially pointing them in the right direction, the more we can do to help them, show up in the way we want them to is going to be key.
Director Lawson-Remer.
Yes, this is an area of great interest and concern to me. I actually worked for many years on trying to think about what community benefits agreement should look like when power projects are built in communities around the world. So it's great to be able to apply some of the lessons learned in our own backyard. Yeah, so let me think a little bit about sort of like a structure and a process for that to kind of figure out how to move that forward. But I think Director Mosca's on the right track on that front. Yeah, I have some like broader, bigger picture comments, but I suppose I can wait until the end.
Did you, Director Lawson-Remer, did you think that perhaps an ad hoc committee of a few people would be appropriate, or did you want to? I know that you have some expertise in this area. Did you want to propose something yourself to the board to look at, or do you want to have like an ad hoc committee where a few of us could kind of come together to look at that language?
I think it would depend on whether there was great interest from my fellow board members. I don't want us to sort of get bogged down in trying to have a meeting of an ad hoc committee and needing enough people to participate if other people are not interested. But if people are interested, then that would be great. So I'm actually open either way, to kind of either bring something myself as like a direction to staff. I bring something myself to the full board as a direction for staff to sort of put a draft together and come back to us, or we could have an ad hoc committee to work on that. I don't have a good sense from my fellow board members what the interest is to be able to propose that.
All right. Well, so we'll leave it on the table, and then maybe our fellow board members
at the next meeting, I'll do some thinking, and at our next meeting, I'll have kind of a proposal.
Sounds great. And then if our fellow colleagues want to kind of comment on that, and when it comes around to their turn to comment, you can do that.
Can I just ask a question, just sort of like very big picture, because I might not be able to stay to the end of this meeting because I have another meeting soon. But are you having trouble entering into agreements because you're operating with an interim criteria? I mean, I guess for me, it seems to me like these are such big, important strategic questions regarding like how we think about the footprint and the role and the policy levers that we're bringing to the fore with San Diego Community Power. So much of that is driven through these power purchase agreements, right? And so the criteria by which we select projects is like one of our most important strategic instruments. So I think if you all are having sort of like grave difficulties in like moving forward because you only have an interim framework, then I would understand why we'd want to sort of approve something now. But I guess unless you're having some grave difficulties, this seems like much more appropriate to wait until our new CEO is onboarded and we have our board strategic retreat, because I think I know I certainly have like some pretty significant thoughts on how this should be structured. And even if I approved it today, I'm gonna want to make like very big changes, like once we have a new CEO on. So I don't quite understand, unless we're having like massive problems entering into agreements under the interim framework.
Yeah.
This is a lot better than the framework that we have in place, but Byron can, and I think that I mean, I agree. If we don't have to move forward right away, there's going to be some really nice high level conversations coming up where we can kind of we can really have meaningful discussions and evolve this even more so. So if it's not necessary to move forward, this could in fact be just like a first kind of stab at it, if you will, where we just kind of really have an opportunity to kind of think about it and just kind of give some thoughts. But Byron, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm happy to follow all your lead here. You know, it's not inhibiting our ability to move forward. I think we see that, you know, we've kind of used an interim process right to date, and I think we've got some contracting coming up. So I think having something in place would be helpful. But you know, I don't think this is an urgent item now. If you all would, you know, prefer to take it away, I think alternatively we could set something in place now, and then, you know, as I mentioned, kind of at the top, make this an iterative process, and then see how it works through, you know, through a review or two, and make changes as well. I'm flexible on that front and happy to do what feels right.
I mean, I just want to clarify. I think that you all so far, I mean, you're only partly through your presentation, but so far you've done a wonderful job. So if this is better than what you're using now, you know, I don't know what you're using now, so it's hard for me to assess whether it's better or not. But I think this seems very solid. It just seems like it might be more appropriate to be an updated interim framework, as opposed to like there's something. It's helpful to iterate, and if this is an update that makes sense to my fellow board members, I'd be happy to support an update to an interim framework. But it seems a little premature to call it a permanent framework or a permanent evaluation framework, even though clearly understanding that even the most permanent things can be changed by a vote of the board. But there's something, I just think there's an important signal that gets sent out that's different when you say you're updating an interim framework versus you're adopting a permanent framework. And I think I don't think we've quite done the due diligence to get to something that I would feel comfortable calling permanent.
Good comments. Director LaCava, you had your hand up.
There's been so much conversation since I first put my hand up. I'm figuring out where to jump in. Well, I would only be supportive of this if there was an understanding that it's not permanent, that it's a living document going forward. And I was comfortable with the idea that we moved from the interim to this. If we want to do this as the new interim policy, I'm okay with that fine tuning, but I would hope, and I think that's what I was getting from staff, is this just a living document that will continue to test to see if it's really getting us to the kinds of contracts that we all believe that this organization is trying to do. At the end of the day, you know, well, let me jump in first. Byron, you're doing a great job. You know, you've done 2 briefs. You did a great job with this. I'm very, very appreciative of it. At the end of the day, you know, these are all very qualitative judgments on these. You know, a low on one category may blow out a high on another category. It's all about how staff interprets them and applies them, how we as the board agree or disagree with how they get applied. And so that's why I'm a little more supportive, but not disagreeing with Member Lawson-Remer and her comments. But I would be comfortable. There are, when it comes time for us to actually take a position on this, I'm going to offer one amendment to the community benefit, since we're on this one that we've spent quite a bit of time. I would support a chair for Member Lawson-Remer to take a first cut at community benefits, given her expertise and experience and education, and then we can decide from there whether to form an ad hoc committee, whether it just needs a little polishing or whatever. I think it might be a little more efficient if she's willing to take on that role. And I think there's also some interesting things about where the community benefits are. I mean, there's obviously a lot of overlap between all these categories, but whether the community benefits are where the project is located, whether a project located remotely could still have community benefits within any of our cities or within the county, and what that might look like. So anyway, so let me summarize. I think it's a great job. I would be supportive as long as I understood this was a living document. 2, understanding that it only is going to be as good as how we apply it, how we interpret this. 3, I would be supportive of Member Lawson Reamer taking a first crack at community benefits to kind of start the conversation and see where we go from there. And I think that summarizes everything I've said. Oh, and then Byron did a great job too. Want to repeat that. So anyway, thank you, Chair.
And I agree with you that the benefits ought to be always in Encinitas, regardless of where the generation is. I absolutely agree with that. Director Davina. You're on mute.
So it's always something. I want to thank Byron. I know we did discuss this in the Finance Committee with Director LaCava and had some similar feedback, but I know there was some of these issues were addressed, especially the idea of sort of really coming in and being the environmental impact or the positive environmental impact per investment. But I did raise the issue of that during that time that we're hiring a new CEO. So I appreciate the comments that this could be it should be a living document that we can evaluate further, especially with our new CEO. I'd like to see it to be the best sort of evaluation criteria used by any CCA, sort of like, cutting edge, really the one that really reflects the state of the art of the industry, this nascent industry. I think that's important. I did raise the issue of, as someone who works in the environmental justice field and represents the disadvantaged community, there's 2 ways of looking at this. I get it, why we want to, in theory, cite investments in disadvantaged communities, but there's another way of looking at that, and that'll be a PhD student be looking at all the disadvantaged communities that received investments in clean energy, but none of them went to the wealthy communities that didn't want them. So we have to be that, there's a double-edged sword to that. So we have to be really careful about that and the way we frame that. And so, that said, I definitely think this is something we should look at, have our new CEO look at, and then number 2, right, we can discuss further during the sort of like strategic planning process. So that's it.
Great conversation so far. This is good. Byron, did you want to move on? How many more slides do you have?
Yeah, I think just a couple more slides. And
right.
Again, I completely agree with and appreciate all the comments and discussion to date. So yeah, let's move on here. But yeah, certainly to confirm, this will be a living document. And even if I wanted to think, well, we do one once and for all, and whenever we do have one once and for all, I'm sure we'll have new criteria, new technologies evolving, and we'll be learning and iterating over time. So I think this will always be a living document for us, certainly. I think the 5th criteria here, criterion, if I'm not out of order, is workforce development. And again, here, similar to other things we've done, kind of the main goal here is to point to other policies or other areas instead of incorporating them into here. So really not to be duplicative or kind of conflict with anything else. We want to point here to our inclusive and sustainable workforce policy with respect to, there's a section there on PPAs. So I think to be consistent with that, to score high, we'd look for compliance with or satisfaction of, I think, all 7 of those points, and it's on the next slide. If you'll hang on just a minute. So the high score is just meeting all 7 of those criteria. Medium then is it doesn't meet necessarily all 7, but it can demonstrate prevailing wage, skilled and trained workforce, and then local hire commitments. And then low obviously does not meet those. And Kimberly, if we can go to the next slide just to review again the 7 different items here in our sustainable workforce policy. So it's using local businesses and employees from San Diego and Imperial counties, probably licensed contractors and certified electricians, local apprentices, and we're emphasizing here graduates of San Diego and Imperial County pre-apprenticeship programs. Let's see, prevailing wage, and then display of jobs posted to job sites, workers' comp, and then also state approved apprenticeship programs. So if you check all 7 of those, then you get the high score. If it's just the 3 which on the previous slide, I believe were prevailing wage, as well as, sorry, Kimberly, can you go to the previous slide? Prevailing wage, skilled trade workforce, and local hire commitments. Those are the three then that'll get to the medium. So you can do those, but can't quite complete all the other four. There'll be a medium score here. So I'm happy to take questions here. I see Director look. Oh, sorry, Chair.
So the high is if you meet all seven, including the state approved apprenticeships, and then
correct.
We go to medium. Is that also meeting all seven, or where are we falling short?
Yeah, so the medium does not have all seven, but it has the prevailing wage, the skilled and trained workforce, and the local hire. So there would be the other four that is not.
What about the state approved apprenticeships?
Any of those other four? I don't believe, no, that if we can, Kimberly, go to the next slide, please. So I think no, I don't think that would be specifically required for the medium. That would be required for the high, but not the medium.
And then the medium, you wouldn't have to be within San Diego or Imperial County.
Right. It would be the properly licensed contractors, the prevailing wage, and previous slide, please, Kimberly. Sorry, next time I'll put these on the same slide. And then for the medium, you would have the local hire as well.
It makes sense to me that, like, for high and medium, that they're all, medium is still an acceptable project to me. And medium is and so, but to me, it would make more sense that it would have state authorized apprenticeships and that they would be local to Imperial County or San Diego County, because I think that means that for me, medium is still kind of a passable type of situation. Low is not so much, but I think even with low that we should have some language there, but at least with high and medium. I think it's Baber, I see your hand up and you haven't commented, so let's go to Bill Baber, but I think that Director was first.
Can you hear me, everyone? Thank you.
We can hear you.
I'm taking over for Greg, which means Mesa lost 30 IQ points by me showing up. But I wanted to say, having worked in this field, there are some projects, the apprentice rules apply to certain kinds of public works projects. Whether or not this is classified as a public work or private work is part of the issue. But Joe, there are some types of projects that you wouldn't use your apprentices on. So you can't penalize them for not having apprentices because it's the type of project or the size of the project or the particular trade that doesn't bring apprentices. Not every project that we will ever hire qualifies for apprentice type workers. That's why it didn't bother me. The medium has the three high value things. Prevailing wage, which means you're paid at the highest possible wage. The skilled and trained workforce means that you've hired journeymen who came from apprentice programs. They're not apprentices per se, they are graduates of apprentice programs. And then the third one was a local hire commit, which means you're from San Diego County. So the median covers, I'd say, 89 to 90% of the value we're seeking. But you can't have apprentices on every project. There's little niche things that they don't work on. Okay.
Thank you, Director LaCava.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing this pretty robust conversation on this item. I think it's really very productive. I'm really appreciative of the comments from my colleagues. A couple of thoughts on this. Again, Brian, thank you for your good work. I'm getting some feedback since I'm the newest board member that the inclusive and sustainable workforce policy is probably due for an update as well. And so I would ask the staff if we could bring that, a reevaluation of that, make sure it's really what this board is interested in doing, bringing that forward because we are relying on that. And second, I guess a question for Byron. In the medium, it calls out for skilled and trained workforce. I've heard that some think that actually is a higher standard and perhaps this is what Member Baber was referring to, is actually a higher standard than what the inclusive and sustainable workforce policy actually calls for. And we have a little bit of a disconnect there.
Appreciate it, Director. That's not the intent, so we can take that away and make sure we line those up.
Yeah, I think we could add
I don't,
skilled and trained workforce to the high category, just to make sure we close that loop for consistency. And maybe when we update the inclusive and sustainable workforce policy, we could take that into consideration as well.
Joe,
I want to lower the
skilled
medium.
and
I want to
trained-
make sure the high is higher.
Skilled and trained workforce is literally, it's a legal term of art in state law. So when we put that in there, there are objective standards under state law to what that means, just to clarify. The sustainable policy is just the way we would describe our goals. So they're similar, but they're not identical concepts.
All right.
Yeah. Let's take another look at them. Thanks.
All right, Director Sotelo Solis.
Thank you so much, Chair. I think my colleagues have hit nail on the head, the diversity and inclusion, or should I say the inclusive and sustainable workforce policy is something that if we do revisit it, I think there will be a robust conversation to be had. And I would be in agreement of actually requiring the use of apprentices that are state approved, apprenticeship programs, both in San Diego and Imperial County. Again, these are apprenticeships, and we don't necessarily, we're trying to lower our carbon footprint. And if we have people traveling from apprenticeship programs, from outside one of the state or two, even, other parts of the state, I don't know that we're doing our due diligence. So I think just possibly closing that circle and really kind of targeting San Diego and Imperial counties, I think would be very clear. And again, as Director Lacava mentioned, I think it's important that we review the workforce policy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Director Lawson Reamer.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to stay to the end of this great conversation. So I'm just going to share my thoughts, even though I won't be able to vote. I guess I just want to reiterate that I think it is clearly, given the robust nature of this conversation, it's like we're quite premature in doing anything that feels permanent. So I would hope that you all, if you do want to move forward with this, would at least title it an update to the interim policy or something along those lines, to signal clearly to stakeholders that we're iterative. So that's kind of my first big comment. And I think I definitely see we're going to need to do a lot of work on the workforce development piece. I think Director Baber's points illuminate the importance of really being clear about the use of technical terms that have meanings in state law that then are binding on us. And we want to be really thoughtful and careful about how we structure our workforce development criteria. The same is going to be true in the community benefits arena. I just would say, this is complex. And I think we're going to need to think about how we create a robust community engagement process once we have a new CEO on board, to ensure that this mechanism, which is how we're going to be driving quite a bit of our footprint in terms of transforming the landscape of power production across our state, is in line with our values. So to be continued, but that's where I think I hope we can land tonight, even if I'm not here to see us to the end of this conversation.
Good comments. Director Baber, you still have your hand up. Did you want to?
Oh,
did you have any other questions or comments?
No, I'll take it down. Sorry.
All right. Those are all really good comments. Byron, did you want to step through the rest of your presentation?
Yeah, happy to. And again, I appreciate the feedback and the comments as well. And I think, happy to make this iterative as we've talked about. And I think as we pointed out, the the main goal here is to be able to point this so it aligns with and doesn't conflict with other policies we have. So certainly, if it's the inclusive sustainable workforce policy that we want to revisit, I think that we'll point to that and we'll update accordingly. And next slide, please, Kimberly. I think there's one left. Sorry, one more. There we go. Thank you. So environmental stewardship here. We, again, high, medium to low, and we got a couple different things going on here. The first is to promote projects that are on currently or previously developed land. So as opposed to greenfield development, look to redevelopment of sites that were previously developed or have been developed. So that's kind of the requirement for high or medium scores here. And then the differentiator between high and medium. And this is, again, kind of an open item, but there needs to be a demonstration of significant environmental events, societal, health, economic, water saving, or environmental benefits beyond just being renewable energy or carbon-free energy. So beyond just being, every solar project we look at is going to be solar project, right? But what does it do beyond that to really demonstrate value to the environment? So again, low water technologies. We even have, there's been a trend recently to focus on bee-friendly or pollinator-friendly planting around these areas in the solar developments and those kinds of things. So really to see a concerted effort that in addition to being renewable energy and clean energy technology, that we're really taking the environment into consideration and demonstrating value and environmental benefits above and beyond. So that's the high. Again, the medium doesn't necessarily do anything beyond being renewable and clean energy and benefiting the environment in that sense, but it is on currently or previously developed land. And then neutral, no impacts, no positive, no negative, and then obviously low. And this one might be disqualifying, but would be significant or unmitigated or unmitigatable negative environmental impacts. So with that, I think that's the end of the presentation. I do appreciate all the discussion and agree with you all. This is really really important here for us. I think the direction to staff the direction to staff obviously to go find these projects, then also to message to the community, to our development friends on the development side as well, that here are our priorities, here's what we're looking for, and this is really a foundational guiding document for us. So I do appreciate all the input. I think we can go to the next slide, Kimberly, which is probably just our recommendation. And my guess is we're going to have hopefully I'll say a motion, but probably with a few amendments and maybe caveats here. But again, the recommendation here is to approve it, and whether it's a final or an interim and subject to additional iteration. Again, we'd be happy to do that and to work with you all to do so. So thanks for your time and for all the discussion.
Great, thank you, Byron. So let me just throw out there for discussion. I agree that perhaps we should name this kind of update to our interim energy proposal, energy evaluation criteria, and then throw it back to staff to basically work with our incoming CEO on a process for breaking this down into smaller pieces and really having more in-depth, robust discussion around each of those pieces. Especially the sustainable and workforce policy and the community benefits and even the environmental stewardship should be kind of broken down further. And so I'll leave that to you guys to kind of come up with more kind of meat on the bones, if you will, and how we're going to kind of walk through that together. Also, even like when we talk about siting as well, I think one of the things that I was interested in being that we're uniquely situated as, cities and counties, and we're also hold the land use authority, how can we as member agencies really help facilitate that siting? And so as we're talking about siting and maybe even breaking it down, are there things that member agencies can do to actually streamline, make it easier for some of these things to kind of be cited? I remember talking about energy storage, and I had gone to my own director of development services and found out that you actually can't really easily cite energy storage in the city of Encinitas. I mean, and it's not even actually an acceptable use. And so it's interesting how anybody would be able to cite that. And so I think kind of looking at different constraints at some point too, that each of us can kind of take back to our own member agencies and really work on would be a good thing as well. So let me do this. This has been a long conversation so far. Let me go to see if we have any public comment, and then we'll come back to the board. Kimberly, do we have anybody in the public that would like to comment on this item?
Yes, we have one written comment that I can read, and then we have two public comments after that.
All right, let's do it. Let's go to the written and then to folks that want to speak.
Okay, this is from Jason Anderson, President and CEO of Clean Tech San Diego. Dear Chairman Mosca and members of the board, please accept this letter as one of support for the proposed energy proposal evaluation criteria being considered at the March 24, 2022 Board of Directors meeting. Over the last several months, Clean Tech San Diego has been working with SDCP staff on the proposed criteria and appreciates the consideration of our feedback. Not only does the criteria further SDCP's clean energy and community benefit commitments, it also provides the industry with a clear understanding of how projects are to be evaluated. Clean Tech San Diego is a member-based business organization founded 15 years ago, positioning the greater San Diego region as a global leader in the clean tech economy. Our members include more than 120 businesses, universities, governments, and nonprofits committed to advancing sustainable solutions for the benefit of the economy, the environment, and all members of the community. Clean Tech San Diego will continue to remain engaged in refining specific criteria as needed and looks forward to continued collaboration on solicitation design. Further, we remain supportive of SDCP's continued efforts to meet renewable energy goals and to produce clean power on behalf of your customers. And then we have a hand raised by CAC Chair Eddie Price. Eddie, you can unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Hey, greetings, thank you. As we're talking about community benefits, I found it ironic that the San Diego Community Power Community, our entity wasn't involved in those conversations like we were, robustly in the beginning of these conversations. And my concern is that the language that is being talked about will be union-only language, which will disallow the opportunities in communities of concern. I'm really concerned about that, and that really bothers me. So I really hope that as we move forward, that the intellectual capacity of the CAC members are utilized in these robust conversations about community benefits, workforce policies, and all that. We have things to bring to the table. We have viewpoints and outlooks and perspectives that really put the community first. And I sincerely hope that we're involved in all those conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. It's always our intent to work with the CAC, with the Community Advisory Committee, and I think that if it wasn't clear, let me make it clear that the staff, when we develop this further conversation, that the Community Advisory Committee should be involved. They ought to be involved in this conversation. That they're our committee that really is helping us to reach out to the community, so they should be involved in the conversation. In any of these conversations, it's critically important. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Kimberly, do we have another speaker?
Yes, Christina Marquez. Christina, you can unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Honorable Chair and board members. Christina Marquez speaking on behalf of IBW 569 and our 3,600 electricians and power professionals. First off, I'd like to welcome Karen to San Diego. I hope you find the best tacos and burritos. I want to urge, and I love your guys' robust conversation regarding community benefit agreements and the workforce. Those are all so important here to make sure that we uplift the community and communities of concern, just like Mr. Price was saying. We urge the SDCP to strengthen the inclusive and sustainable workforce policy. And why do I bring this up? Because it's involved with the energy proposal evaluation criteria. Please amend your inclusive, please amend it to incorporate the use of local state approved apprenticeship programs. And I know that one of you or both, a few of you mentioned it, but I would recommend to amend 2A3, stay with me here, 2A3, and require the use of apprentices who are in a state-approved apprenticeship program in San Diego and Imperial counties. Not utilize or suggest but require the use of apprentices who are in the state-approved apprenticeship programs in San Diego and Imperial counties. And then you can remove 2A7 because it's consolidated into 2A3. Hopefully you can all understand that and have it in front of you. But this is also important, again, so that local apprentices are being used, and hopefully they're being funneled in from pre-apprenticeships that are here in San Diego and Imperial counties, like we have at the Educational Cultural Complex and other various places, so that they get funneled in and people from the communities of concern and are working and getting that experience and at a high level, not at a, starting at entry level, but with the opportunity of uplifting and having a good middle class career. And so that's why we want to make sure that this is, amended if possible. And then also under the PPAs of the workforce policy, that's where I didn't see anything about the skilled and trained. It says it at the top of it under purpose, but under the actual policy, it doesn't say anything about skilled and trained. And it sounds like you guys are all on your A game, and I'm calling you the A team, and you've got this, but I appreciate your time and I yield my time. Have a good evening.
Kimberly, did we have any other speakers?
No more hands raised other than Bill Carnahan and Director LaCava.
All right, well, thank you to the public for those comments, and I'll come back to the board. Bill Carnahan.
I just wanted to present a little bit of perspective in terms of some of the things that have been discussed. I believe that this document is as important as our strategic planning document. And in fact, they should be melded together and work hand in hand, because they set the stage for the kind of entity we're going to be when it comes to relating to our customers and the environment in the area. So they really are not two standalone documents. We probably would have been having a little different conversation if we had already been able to have our strategic plan. It probably should have come first, but we weren't able to do that. But it's coming up shortly, and so I think the timing is good to meld those two together. I would remind everyone that the time is really now for us to consider this, maybe even a little before now. But it's not the kind of a policy that you might look at in the very beginning when you're short-staffed and trying to get started up. We weren't. This relates to contracts that are 10 or 15, longer than 10 years, 15 or 20-year contracts. When we started out, we had a lot of empty buckets when it came to resources, and we had load coming on that had to be served 8,760 hours a year. So what we do is we've really relied up to now on system purchases, where you really can't identify the source, and many times in those contracts are multiple sources because there's system sales from other folks to meet our needs. So we weren't able, quite frankly, to apply this to those sales because it wasn't able to be discerned. So this is the time to make this transition. We're going to have a lot of 10, 15, 20-year contracts out there before we're done. We're in the process of basically doubling our initial size right now with the residential load coming on. And then after that, we still have the county and national city, such that we have a lot of resources, or you all have a lot of resources to acquire. And this becomes the basis for how you approach that and how you deal with that and the kind of neighbor you are and how forward-looking we are. So it's very, very important as is the strategic plan. So now's the time, and this is the place, and I have every confidence that we can continue to move forward in the resource acquisition area to include those long-term contracts under rules and criteria that meet our needs.
Thank you. Thank you for level setting there. That was good. Director LaCava.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Bill, for that perspective. I think that's kind of the icing of the cake of this conversation. Again, thank you, Byron, for your good work and everybody that contributed to this effort. And again, thank you, Chair, for allowing a very robust conversation by all the directors. I think it was really very, very helpful. And so with that, I'll give my try at a motion to move the staff recommendation as an update to the interim energy proposal evaluation criteria with one amendment, and that is to add the phrase "and can demonstrate skilled and trained workforce" at the end of the high criteria in Section 5, workforce development. And Chair, since I'm still new with the board, we had an awful lot of direction to staff. Do we would normally include that in the motion? Or do we think our discussion has adequately communicated our interest?
Well, so I'm not, well, why don't we do this? There's a motion on the table. I guess
Okay.
I think that could be a significant amendment, but I'm not necessarily sure. I'd like to have a fuller discussion. So I guess, I'd like to either move what we have on the table now without amendment and say it's an interim, and then come back to all of these topics and have a fuller discussion. Because I think that what you're proposing is a significant amendment, substantive amendment, because I'm looking more toward wanting to update the sustainable workforce policy and include authorized apprenticeships. And that's something that we've been aiming for some time. And I'd like to kind of have that conversation. And so I guess, anyways.
Yeah, I'll just add to the public that called in. I don't think we can actually discuss the inclusive and sustainable workforce policy at today's meeting. It's not agendized for that. And so the public input is certainly appreciated by me, but we can't take an action on that on tonight, so.
Right, all right, so we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second as to that motion?
And again, to the maker of the motion, this is still a living document, and it would, again, with the language that we discussed, still needing to come back.
It's just an update to the interim one. So we're still working towards a more final one.
But what your motion does is it essentially says that I think that there, with either of those kind of high, medium, or low, that none of those categories will require that the to get a high, medium, or low, that you would have to have an state authorized apprenticeships here in San Diego County or Imperial counties.
I have not included that. I wasn't sure that we were able to, since it was the workforce policy that was being discussed as being amended. But
the high, I think, requires it to be unauthorized, state authorized apprenticeship.
Mr. Chair, if I could, my understanding was that the concept was that particular item was not explicitly included, even though it was included on the list of the medium. And so my understanding is that it would be included as a criteria for consideration to be included on the high. Was that the intent, Director LaCava?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
All right, and then, all right, so can you restate your motion then, Director
Sure,
LaCava?
let me see if I can recall it. To move the staff recommendation as an update to the interim energy proposal evaluation criteria with one amendment, and that is to add the phrase "and can demonstrate skilled and trained workforce" to the end of the high criteria in Section 5, workforce development.
All right. All right. And then,
Oh.
then I guess a friendly amendment would be that, or do we have a second on this?
I'll second it, and I think that you're gonna lead to my friendly amendment, but go ahead, Joe.
Which is only that we direct staff to work on this. This needs work, and so work on break it down, and that it comes back, that staff designs some way of kind of bringing in the community advisory committee, bringing in the community, and having discussions about this, and bringing in Director Lawson Reamer on the community benefits, that we're basically moving toward evolving our sustainable workforce policy, evolving the community benefits policy, evolving the environmental stewardship policy, because I think we've been talking about this for a while, and a lot of our stakeholders are not seeing the result of those policies evolving. So they need to start to kind of evolve. And as Bill Carnahan was saying, this should really match our strategic plan. Essentially, what are our values? Who do we want to be? And so I think that this should be that kind of representation of who we are. And so I don't think it's quite there. And so my friendly amendment would be that staff basically come back with a plan to kind of start to evolve this document as soon as possible, so that as we're kind of looking at those more long-term contracts, that we do in fact have a criteria that matches up with who we are.
That's terrific. I was looking for a little direction about whether to include that in the motion, but yeah, that's a terrific amendment. Thank you, Joe.
Oh, I'll second that with that friendly amendment. I think it's also really essential that with the state approved apprenticeship programs in that language, we really I think it's important. But we have a robust conversation as part of the workforce policy discussion.
All right, Director Jadina.
Because we could be here all night. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not doing any amendments, I promise. It was just to say that this is why we hired a really smart CEO, because this is what a CEO of an organization would, this will be one of her many first tasks, is to really lead this process. And so that's it.
All right, so we have Director LaCava. Did you have any other questions or comments?
No.
All right, so we have a motion by Director LaCava and a second by Director Sotelo Solis. And so let's move to voting.
Director Baber, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Dedina, how do you vote?
Dedina, aye.
Director LaCava, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Lawson Reamer, how do you vote? Director McCann, how do you vote? Director McCann? Director Sotelo Solis, how do you vote?
Sotelo Solis, aye.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with 5 directors voting yes and 2 directors absent.
Great. All right, let's move to item 16, update on community power plan. And this is Colin Sanatuli and Nelson Lamelli.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board. It is good to see you again. And we on the programs team are very excited about starting this discussion on the community power plan. And just let me quickly emphasize before we get into the slides that this is just a start of the discussion, and we have lots of opportunities for you all to be informed, or I should say, to inform the community power plan. This is really just the beginning. And more importantly, your community members are going to be very involved and engaged throughout the development of this plan. And the intent is for this to be reflective of community needs and community priorities. And I think as Nelson kind of walks through how this is structured, that will be very clear to you all. So understanding this is the beginning, in a minute, Nelson's going to walk through a fairly high level structure on how we're going to develop the plan. And then we'll be back to do a really kind of deep dive with the board, with our consultants, kind of facilitating that visioning and goal setting for the plan. So we're going to get into the good stuff soon. This is just a little taste. Before Nelson starts on the structure, I did want to say that we're anticipating this plan to look out 3 to 5 years. And in that time frame, I think we can assume that there'll be a package of programs that will be proposed that are going to have some pilot projects and really ways for us to kind of test out these new technologies, test consumer acceptance, and really figure out how best we can work as an organization with industry to accelerate the deployments of these technologies. And that effort is really just to allow us to kind of dip our toe in the water as we continue to form as an organization and grow. And the learnings from those pilot projects will be important for us. And they're going to be early, but as we're growing as a staff and as we're growing our war chest to fund ourselves to do really big things, and then as we're kind of growing our reputation and as our reputation solidifies in the region, it'll be important that we're doing those kind of early pilot projects and getting those early wins. And I think we're going to see that in the plan. Kind of beyond those initial pilot projects, one of the things I know we're very excited about is the expectation that the community power plan is likely to highlight and really clarify the unique position that we find ourselves in here at SDCP. And you all know, I think probably that you've heard it a lot, this term market transformation. It gets thrown around a lot, and it probably gets used too much in the clean energy industry and used inappropriately. But here in San Diego, we have a chance for it to be real. And that is based on a number of factors, but largely due to our size. We're actually dealing with an actual market or nearly an entire market here. And it's a little bit different than we see with other CCAs that are geographically, they're just dealing with a smaller size. And in that respect, it's more of a portion of a bigger market or bigger metro area. So we're structured to be very instrumental in that market. And it allows us to do something truly transformational. And so as we're working to shift towards a clean energy economy and make sure no one gets left behind during that shift, the intent of the community power plan is just that. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Nelson to walk through that overarching structure. This is really just the beginning. I'll be available, as will Nelson, after the slides, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Colin. Hello, good evening, board members. So as Colin mentioned, I'm kind of here to provide you with a quick update on the community power plan, which we look at as a formal public-facing plan that will be coming back to you after we're done with it for formal adoption. And really, this kind of lays out the opportunities to address community needs, priorities, explore partnerships, know who the stakeholders are that we need to engage, and then also get an initial 5-year program suite for implementation. So Kimberly had advanced to this slide already, but I wanted to start with, if you can go back, Kimberly. But I wanted to start with a quick history on where we're at with the community power plan. So back in May of 2020, San Diego Community Power executed a data management agreement with Calpine Energy Solutions, who we just call Calpine. One portion of that contract included funding for the creation of what then was called the Community Development Strategic Plan, which doesn't really have a nice ring to it. So we now call it the Community Power Plan. Following that, in September of 2021, we came back to the board and presented on energy program priorities for the fiscal year, which included the development of the Community Power Plan. And here we are now. Following that, in November, Calpine, on behalf of SDCP, actually issued an RFP looking for firms that would complete the community needs assessment and develop this plan. We received 4 proposals, of which we involved the community advisory committee in helping us review those proposals and ultimately select a consultant, which we did in January of this year. So we evaluated those proposals. We interviewed 3 firms and ultimately selected one to move forward with to develop this plan. We worked all throughout February of this year to develop the scope of work, which I will present in a couple of slides, and presented this back to the CAC in March for feedback. We welcome your feedback as we go through the slide in terms of what the scope will look like. So if you go to the next slide, want to get started by talking about the fact that the first step really to the community power plan is engaging in a community needs assessment. And really what this does is it provides insight into the values, the priorities, the needs for our customers. And we do this because we want to ensure that any programs that STCP launches will ultimately be well received and successful. So during this process, we're going to be conducting a robust community engagement portion of, or process in partnership with community-based organizations, and going to be using language justice practices to ensure that members who have non-English speaking households are included throughout this process as well. The engagement will take multiple forms and it will include listening sessions, interviews with interest groups, briefings with community groups. We will be doing a community survey, leveraging our connections and partnerships that we currently have and those that your member agencies have to solicit feedback on this survey, and also doing a lot of engagement with the community by attending in-person community events like the Earth Day Fair. Additionally, we're going to be hosting a series of goal-setting workshops with the community at large, but also importantly with the CAC, with the member agencies, and with the board that will help inform the development of what you see down below, which is this program prioritization framework. And really what this framework does, it allows us, it's a decision-making framework that allows us to start to prioritize the universe of programs into ones that best meet the needs for STCP and our communities, those needs that we uncover through that needs assessment that we're going to be undergoing. So to really start to understand what that universe of programs is, Kimberly, if we go to the next slide, we're going to also be undertaking a programs market assessment. Oop, one slide too far. There we go. So we're going to be undertaking a program market assessment. And what this will do is help us understand what is the universe of programs that currently exist, what is the universe of programs that have existed, so programs that were implemented and maybe sunset, or programs that were implemented and then discontinued, and start to understand where the programmatic gap exists. Is there one that maybe we can step in and make it more successful, make it a little bit better for our customers? Additionally, we want to understand what are the funding sources available for programs, right? We can't self-fund every program out there. So we need to start looking at what are the funding sources available at the state level, at the federal level, maybe some grants if they're available at that as well. And also start to understand what are the best practices for delivering programs. So we know that rebate programs may not be the best for certain types of programs. So part of this also includes what we're calling the CCA program listening tour. And what this is we're going to be going to the existing CCAs, the established CCAs, or community choice programs, and looking at the types of programs that they have launched to understand how they got to that, why they launched this program, and really trying to borrow the good ideas and then understand what are the lessons learned for unsuccessful programs, maybe programs that they launched and really they were like, it's not worth exploring any further, to understand maybe it wasn't worth to them because of X reason, and if we do Y, it will be successful for us. So all of this is really, again, to get that universe of programs that then we will start to rank these programs and prioritize them based on key indicators that we learn and we glean from the community needs assessment. And so we want to make sure that the list of programs that are developed for implementation over the next 5 years, that these programs are aligned with the community, are aligned with the needs of the community, and are aligned with the priorities of the community and the organization and our member agencies, and have a plan of how to phase them in over the next 5 years. So if we go to the next slide, Kimberly, all of this will culminate in a formal document, as I mentioned before, that we will bring back to you for adoption. But before we get to that step, we want to make sure that we receive as much feedback and as much input on the draft plan. And therefore, we're going to be presenting it back to the stakeholders that we engaged with, back to the community, and allowing for an additional 30 days to receive written comments on the plan. So we'll make this available on our website, and people can submit written comments on, like, you know, we really wanted this, or we wanted to see this program idea, or, you know, our needs were this. Following that, the final plan that we bring back to you all for adoption will be available in multiple languages, such as Spanish and Tagalog. We're maybe exploring other languages if that's feasible, or if there's an audience for that. But that will be ultimately where everything comes down. So if you go to the next slide, Kimberly, I want to end the update by kind of showing you how all of these pieces that I just talked about play together and come together. So as you can see, the biggest piece here is really this community needs assessment, because that's really going to feed into everything we do with the community power plan. You see the market assessment is on the side, and it's a different color because we use that and feed that into this framework to make sure that we get the proper programs for our region and for our communities. And so with that, I want to conclude my update on the community power plan, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Nelson and Colin. So Nelson, in terms of the timeline, what can we expect in terms of just moving forward in the deliverable?
Yeah, so in terms of timeline, we are racing to start this work next month. And we anticipate this to take around 9 to 10 months from beginning to board adoption of the plan.
All right, so sometime in 2023, we would have the plan before us. So are we kind of thinking that we would have the plan finished maybe the first quarter of 2023, and that this would feed into our updated kind of strategic plan for 2023? All right. How does, Director Sotelo Solis and I were at a conference recently, and another community choice energy program was talking about the fact that some of their programs were very much unsubscribed or undersubscribed. So I guess this plan would tell us whether a program is relevant to a community, but does it tell us anything about, like, why programs may be undersubscribed? Like, if there's a program that SDG&E has that's that's required through PUC or CEC, but they don't really have a lot of ratepayers subscribed. Does it tell us why it's not subscribed? I mean, I guess if it's not relevant, it's not relevant. But are there techniques that this will kind of illuminate that can be used to kind of increase the subscription to a program?
Yeah, so that's ultimately what we're trying to get at with that market assessment, is understand why certain programs are undersubscribed. And additionally, are there like things that we can do as an agency to make them better? So an example would be one CCA that I used to work for. They heard a lot from their community members that the SGIT program, the statewide program, was really difficult to maneuver and to get applications in, to the point where a lot of the solar developers who were installing batteries were actually paying incentives to people to not apply for this program, which it's kind of counterproductive. And so one of the things they identified this gap, identify this issue, and what they did is they stepped in and say, okay, we're going to submit the applications for our community. And so we're trying to understand those types of issues that you called out, And that's going to be happening through the market assessment and through the CCA listening tour to understand from the other CCA program staff, like, why aren't these programs as successful as you maybe envision them to be? And all of that is going to be written into the plan itself, and it's going to be provided as an appendix.
All right. And one last comment. At that same meeting conference, we heard from some folks up north. I mean, they were kind of more rural areas of up north, or even kind of ones that were not linked in, like Fort Bragg on the coast there. And they talked about these energy. Director Sotelo Solis, if you're there, remind me. I think it was called like a regional energy network, REN or something like that, where they were able to kind of access money from the state that would allow them to actually direct some of these programs. Is that an end result of this community update plan, power plan update? Because, like, for instance, if Nelson, through this plan, we decide that, like, National City, that these programs are relevant to National City, and they should be, that we could get a higher subscription through a certain process, but the IOU actually has that program. Is there a way to kind of get those dollars that we could actually implement it through, tailor it for National City and get a higher subscription for National City ourselves? And is that a vehicle?
So all of that is up on the part of the plan on the table. So staff has actually been looking at what it would be to form a REN, or regional energy network. And so all of that would be part of what this plan would look at is, does it make sense for San Diego Community Power to form a REN? Does it make sense for San Diego Community Power to maybe submit and to become a administrator of energy efficiency funding, so that we can do those types of programs that you're calling out, Chair Mosca? So all of that is part of this process. I do want to kind of emphasize what Colin had mentioned earlier, that as we start to understand what these types of programs are, right, we don't have to necessarily wait until the very end of the plan to start to explore these a little bit deeper. We can start to do research as we start to understand that, like, yes, these types of programs are bubbling to the top.
Right. Perfect. All right. Any questions for staff? Gosh, I think I took up all the time. All right, let's see if there's any public comment. Kimberly, do we have any public comment on this item?
My apologies. My mouse is not working very well right now, but no, there are no public comments.
All right, well, let's bring it back to the board. And this was, Nelson, are you looking for a motion? This is a receive and file, right? All right, so this is just an update and you're gonna come back to us. Obviously, we are very interested in when you have an outreach plan and how are you gonna be in each of our communities. I would love to kind of help you reach out to the residents in Encinitas, and I know all of my colleagues would like to help you with their member agencies as well. So absolutely consider us a resource, and I look forward to continuing the conversation with you guys.
Will get tired of me pestering you for help.
All right. Well, if you're helping us, I'm not going to get tired of you. If you're not, no, joking. All right. See you guys. Thank you so much. Let's move on to item number 17. It's an update on residential enrollment marketing. Rita de la Fuente is going to lead this first half.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. I am your External Affairs Director, and I'm just here to give you a brief update on our marketing and PR efforts for the residential enrollment. We've been working really hard with our partners at Civilian to develop an outreach campaign to both build trust and get the word out to people. So we're also very fortunate to have tremendous support from our community that has helped propel our name and help public understanding. So as many of you know, everyone in our 5 founding member cities are now receiving our enrollment notices. So customers receive those 60 days prior to enrollment, and then each customer receives 4 enrollment notices 30 days apart. These notices are regulated by the CPUC. However, we were able to incorporate some design elements to elevate our brand. Next slide, please, Kimberly. Just a quick reminder of how we've been rolling out our targeted marketing. So each city has a total of 8 weeks of paid media. And while we're still receiving data on how that's going, we do know that for our launch in IB alone, we've succeeded in driving over 1 million impressions. And I will keep the board posted on how that's going. Next slide, please. So there's 2 concepts that we've been running during residential enrollment. These are designed to build trust and relatability. We have one concept that is featuring trusted community leaders, and that they have a personal and a professional connection to our purpose. The other concept in the banner that you see below is to give a feeling of 2 neighbors just speaking to each other about our service to build excitement and curiosity. Next slide, please. Here's a snapshot of our paid media presence. The concepts that you saw on the previous slide that we've put together can be seen in print and online. We also have a presence on radio as well as streaming audio platforms. We've included Chinese, Vietnamese, Tagalog, and Spanish-speaking publications, as well as outdoor media. Next slide, please. So one thing that's great about having a small and agile team is that we can quickly respond to concerns that we're hearing in the community. So I really want to give a shout out to our program and policy manager, Sebastian Saria, for putting this series together that addresses common themes that we're hearing and just giving facts for people as we roll out. We're also paying very close attention to our website to make sure that our information stays updated and clear. And we have tools on our website that we can point to help people understand their bill. So that includes our bill explaining video and our bill comparison calculator. Next slide, please. So we've recently entered into 2 partnership agreements with the San Diego Padres and the San Diego Loyal Soccer Club. Thank you. Both teams give us great visibility and credibility among our community, but I want to make it very clear that this is just the start of us entering into partnerships. We're also researching opportunities with community service organizations and other institutions, smaller institutions, and other community groups. Next slide, please. And we are talking to a lot of people. I want to thank the board, our community advisory committee, our city staff liaisons, our community advocates for helping us have a presence and get the word out. We have been to farmers markets, expos, fairs, community cleanups, and this area is where we're really seeing that our outreach efforts are effective. People are recognizing us. You can see that they are excited and curious and want to know more. So we've also been presenting to several groups, our city councils, community groups, business organizations. So thank you again to you all for passing those opportunities over to me. There's a robust list of places that we've been in my staff report, and we're always adding to our engagement calendar. Next slide, please. So we've had a lot of great coverage from our local media, along with major outlets like the UT and KPBS, CBS. We've also been featured in smaller local community papers. A couple of that I've featured here have run our editorials from our CAC members. We'll continue that outreach, and we're expecting a large jump prior to our big enrollment in May, and then at the end of our when we conclude our enrollment phase. So right now we're working towards that celebration where we can reveal our region's progress with all of these enrollments, and we're looking forward to that. So with that, we're having a great time. Everyone's working really hard on this, and thank you for your attention, and here for questions.
Thank you, Rita. So as we kind of head into Encinitas in April, and then is it San Diego in May?
San Diego and Chula Vista.
San Diego. Oh, that's big. May is extremely important. So as we head into those months, can you kind of like think are there learning lessons that we've kind of taken from obviously we're perfect and we're amazing and everything went really well, but like are there things that you've learned from the early kind of launches, even when you think back to the quasi municipal accounts and the CNI customers? Are there things that we've learned and that we're kind of changing as we approach some of the huge kind of launches?
I don't know that necessarily things that we're changing, but reoccurring questions that we've received, we have been able to address more directly on our website through our FAQs and be prepared as staff and ambassadors to address those questions. And so if we know that there's certain things that people are confused on, we're able to get ahead of that. And so that's helped us prepare for May.
All right. I know that still we have a, I think our opt-out is still very good. But those that are opting out, it still seems that, that some folks are skeptical of government-run programs. Are we starting to kind of hone some of our messaging around that to even try to kind of to appeal to some of those folks that may think, that may be, kind of a bit skeptical of government programs, but, here you have an option for the first time ever.
Yes, I think that we've seen some progression there because at first there was a lot of resistance from people because of the being enrolled automatically. So the way we've honed our messaging is to remind people that yes, this is an automatic enrollment designed so that we can get to our greenhouse gas emission goals faster, but now you actually have a choice. So as before you didn't. So you can opt out anytime, you can opt down. If you're at 100, you can opt up to 100 if you're at 50%. So really stressing the value of choice.
Right. All right. Director Baber?
Laura's been great in the rollout on Mesa. The one thing that I learned, and Laura's been able to help me, there's a small vocal group of people who already have solar on their house, but can't switch immediately to us because they have to wait. They'll remind me what's the term. They have to wait for their cycle to end.
True up.
So they have to true up, right? And so we had to spend some time with some folks in La Mesa explaining that to them because, and they're loud and they're also, they've already committed to solar, but they are on a different track. So as you roll into the bigger communities, I would say that you may find that too, that the people who are invested in solar, who have to true up, are going to have a bunch of questions. And thank you, Laura and Bill, for helping out with those particular questions.
I agree too, because I mean, Encinitas has a very high penetration of solar, rooftop solar in the city. And I think that with the conversation kind of going on in San Francisco about NEM, I think that they're a bit sensitive already about that. And so, here comes along SDCP. What does this mean for me? So I definitely think that I've gotten a whole lot of questions early on from rooftop solar customers. They're also probably, I think, what was it? Director Sotelo, somebody had some data that showed that the average consumer spends less than 2 minutes a year on their bills, looking at their electric bills, their utility bills. And so
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and so I would venture to say, yeah, I would venture to say the data is probably, I'm assuming that my solar customers probably spend, much more than 2 minutes. They probably are customers that are spending 15, 20 minutes a year on their bill. So anyways.
I would agree, and that would be one of our top 5 things that we hear when we're out and about is, what does this mean for me as a solar customer? So we've been very intentional about addressing that and amplifying it on our materials and website.
All right, well, this was a great presentation. Kimberly, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, we don't. Sorry, my mouse.
All right. All right. Well, this is a receive and file. And if there are no more questions for Rita, well, I'll just say thank you so much, Rita. This was a great presentation and much appreciated, because this is critically important to reach out to our customers as we're moving forward and what they're thinking about us. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to our last item, and definitely not our least important. This is a critically important item. It could have been up there with number 2 or 3. So I'm going to turn this over to Eric Washington. This is I won't take any wind out of your sails, because this is really important. So I'll let you talk about it.
Thank you, Chair Mosca. No worries about taking wind out of the sails. There's a lot of wind here and a lot of sails. So I'm happy. I'm happy to seek approval from the board for the agreement with River City Bank for the early renewal and the increase to our existing credit facility with River City Bank. And I'd also like to applaud the leadership of San Diego Community Power, along with the Power Services team and the Data Analytics and Account Services team, who joined with the Finance Department collaboratively, really to support my negotiations with the bank, again, for the early renewal of the credit facility, as well as the increase. So the recommendation before the board tonight is to approve the agreement with River City Bank for the renewal and the increase to our credit facility. Next slide, Kimberly. In addition, I'm asking the board to also approve staff to execute the amended and restated credit agreement and other related loan documents to implement the new commitment amount of $50 million and for an extended term for an additional 2 years. So by way of background, in December of 2019, staff was directed by the board to finalize negotiations with River City Bank for banking services, and also to provide us with the initial operating credit facility. In April 2020, the board again directed staff to finalize the documentation and execute the documents to implement, at the time, the $35 million line of credit. Then subsequently in May of 2020, as a result of the need to post $5 million in collateral in conjunction with the loan, the board allowed staff or directed staff to enter into 2 promissory notes, one with Emerald Blue LLC in the amount of $3 million, and a second with BQuest Foundation for $2 million to shore up the $5 million collateral that was needed for posting to get access to the $35 million line of credit. Next slide, Kimberly. And overall, the structure of the existing credit facility, for the most part, remains intact, with the exception of the increased commitment amount and the extension of the term for an additional 2 years, as well as a change in the index rate associated with the revolving feature of the credit facility. But overall, the interest rates remain pretty similar to the previous index rate, which was the LIBOR rate, which is now being indexed to the 3-month secured overnight financing rate. Other than those 3 key changes to the credit agreement, everything else, as I previously mentioned, remains intact. In terms of repayment, it's interest only monthly on the outstanding balance on the line of credit, with the option to switch that over to a term loan should San Diego Community Power decide to do so, which would allow for the full amortization of the outstanding balance at the time over a 5-year period, with equal monthly payments, including interest and principal. There is a letter of credit feature provided under the revolving line of credit that allows San Diego Community Power to post letters of credit in lieu of cash for certain power providers as collateral for procurement purchases. But again, overall, the balance of the terms and the conditions and interest rate for the existing credit facility remains intact. Next slide, Kimberly. So why the early renewal and why the increase? You'll recall from our conversations during our January board meeting around rate increases. Essentially, it was centered around the unexpected rising cost of power, which you'll recall over the summer we experienced some historic costs in terms of per kilowatt hours. And Byron, our power services director, can attest to that. And the finance department can certainly verify that, given some of the amounts that we had to actually pay in conjunction with those energy costs. Also, unexpected conditions in the market. I think in a previous comment someone made was with regard to opt-out rates or customer demand. So we've been fortunate thus far to have pretty low opt-out rates, but as we roll into or continue to roll out phase 3, that could potentially shift. Hopefully that scenario will not play out. But in the event that it does, we've got fiscal resources so that we're able to respond adequately should that occur. The increase in having access to the revolving line of credit also gives us the opportunity to take advantage with our procurement efforts so that we've got the resources needed to continue to procure as we meet the needs for our power portfolio to serve our customers. And then, of course, lastly, with increased access to credit, it also shores up our reserves as we continue to endeavor to achieve our 90 days cash on hand target as laid out in our reserve policy. Next slide, Kimberly. So while Kimberly's advancing the slide, this item was previewed with our Finance and Risk Management Committee during our March 3rd meeting, in which we discussed the early renewal and the increase to the line of credit with the support of the committee to move this item forward to the board, ultimately seeking approval as well as supportive of the notion to continue to negotiate with River City Bank for the increase to the $50 million credit, which I'm happy to announce was approved by the bank. We have documentations in play right now. The documents have been reviewed by our council with minor changes. So the hope is that we would be able to move relatively quickly to close on the increased credit facility. Next slide, Kimberly. So again, thanks to the collaborative efforts of staff, the support of our interim CEO, our Chief Operating Officer, Power Services Director, as well as our Director of Data Analytics and Account Services, who really joined in the conversation to help me negotiate the terms with the bank and respond to their questions. So with that, Chair, again, the recommendation is that we approve the agreement with River City Bank and allow staff to execute the new credit agreement as well as related loan documents to implement the credit facility at the higher dollar amount of $50 million. That concludes over to you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Excellent presentation and excellent news. Just great collaboration throughout the entire team. You as our CFO and the entire team. I mean, it's just a testament, you know, I think it was maybe a few years ago that we went for first extension. And, you know, now we're able to qualify for even more. And it's just a testament to what we're building here, which is a solid organization, which is delivering on all of its goals. So thank you so much, Eric. Any questions for Eric on this item? This is great news. I mean, and he kind of really told you, you know, what the terms are and what the agreement is and why that flexibility, that extension is necessary because it's creating a higher level of flexibility for us within our financial situation. So this is great news.
Chair, I have no questions, but I will move to approve with staff recommendation to approve the agreement with River City Bank for the renewal and increase of credit facility.
Awesome. So we have a motion by Director Sotelo Solis. Do we have a second? I'll second that motion. And so we have a motion on the table. Kimberly, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, we do not.
All right. So we have a motion on the table. If there are no other questions or comments, let's go to vote.
Director Baber, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Dedina, how do you vote? Director Dedina? Director LaCava, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Lawson Reamer, how do you vote? Director McCann, how do you vote? Director Sotelo Solis, how do you vote?
Sotelo Solis, aye.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with 4 directors voting yes and 3 directors absent.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Eric. You've done a great
Chair.
job, and thank you to the team.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let's move on to reports by our management. So Bill, did you have any report to give us?
No, I don't. Everything was covered.
Awesome. That was a very good report. I don't think I could give a report like that.
I read the audience, you know.
Exactly. Assistant General Counsel?
I have no report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No report. All right. Nobody has a report. Director comments. All right. I've kept you long enough. All right. Thank you, guys. Have a nice evening. And until next time.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
All right. Bye. Thank you.